Let's imagine you are a normal guy. You want to try a new game. So you turn it on and wait to enter a new world. But something is wrong. You feel that your body is being transferred. You wake up in a brand new body as a prince. Now you are a leader of an army of orcs, and you have to end the rebellion along with a few other princes. So you check your stats, and you are as weak as a little rabbit. But you have no choice but to go along with this adventure. You have to make yourself stronger, end the rebellion, and maybe even conquer the kingdom. So let's begin the story. The tale kicks off with a young dude sprinting down the sidewalk. His parents named him Zhu in gang, hoping he'd grow up to be someone big. When he walks into a shop, two guys at the counter spot him right away. One clerk tells him he saved a copy of the pre-ordered game and shows the remake box called Night Saga Ray. It's a fantasy game that tells the epic war between humans and demons. You can pick either the human hero Locke or the demon king's eldest son, Zephyr Ragnaros. Both roam a huge world, doing different missions. He's already beaten the old version more than 10 times and knows it inside out. The new add-on is the first one to use virtual reality tech. Back home, he heads to his gaming chair and carefully pulls the tiny cartridge out of its pack. He sits down, snaps the VR helmet onto his head, and slots the cartridge into the console. Crossing his arms, he gets ready for a marathon session. His plan is to play for just 8 hours, not overdoing it. Bluish rays of light wrap around him as the immersion finishes. Suddenly, the first thing he sees is the ceiling of some unknown place. He wonders if he's actually inside the game because he didn't wake up in a bed. Then he spots something weird. His face looks different. He's terrified. He realizes he's stuck in a body he doesn't recognize. A deep voice comes from the door, asking if he's still asleep. An orc bursts into the room, telling him the day's gonna be busy. Impressed, he compliments the graphics, but the creature doesn't get what he's saying. He quickly figures out he can actually talk to the characters. The creature says his name is Karak and asks the young guy for his name. Then he calls him Prince Sutra and tells him to hurry out. Right then, he finds out he's in the body of Ignis, the 9th son of the Demon King. He gestures, tries to open the status window, and a screen pops up in the air showing his character info. He checks the stats and sees the numbers are low for someone in his rank. Looking at the skills, he spots 2 brand new options that weren't in the original game. Curious, he asks what the skill called Protagonist Configuration Adjustment actually does. Karak shouts again from the door, demanding he get out right now. Without a word, he follows him out of the tent. Outside, the sight totally blows his mind. A small army of orcs is gathered at the camp, ready to move. Sutra asks why the vibe is so warlike, but the guard tells him to quit the nonsense. The creature says the mission is to wipe out the Scarlet Lightning bastards. His army cheers, and the kid feels hopeless because there's no tutorial. Right then, the Scarlet Lightning orc tribe launches a rebellion. He has to handle the clash together with the 7th prince and the 8th princess. The kid's worry grows as everything unfolds. He asks why they're only taking 10 people, but Karak corrects him, saying it's just a patrol. He thinks the prince's behavior is odd, since he usually stays quiet. With a simple gesture, he opens a holographic interface next to him. A mini map of the area pops up, and he decides to keep it on to make the path easier. While scanning the map, he spots a secret path and thinks it might be an event. Karak complains the original route would take forever. Sutra steps up, promising he knows a much faster shortcut. He follows the new guide along a narrow trail deep in the forest. We keep moving forward, still on edge, through the thick woods. All that effort leaves the kid breathless and drenched in sweat. After pushing hard, we finally reach a clearing that has a huge stone gate right in the middle. That old cracked gate really stands out among the thick foliage. One of the orcs asks how the prince found this spot and wonders if he could be a mage. Exhausted, the kid realizes just how fragile a level 1 character can be. He brushes off the question and asks them to see if the doors can be opened. All of a sudden, a bright golden aura bursts around the prince. He jumps, startled by that sudden burst of power. A system notification pops up confirming that the character has leveled up. He can't believe he got experience just by walking. His stats went up and he got 2 extra skill points. That surprise makes him pause and think for a moment. They call him over to help open the gate, and he joins the crew. He feels safer now that he's not alone on this trek. His special skill acts like a kind of plot armor. The gate swings open, showing the entrance to a dark, mysterious cave. Karak says dwarves must have dug this place, but Sutra had no clue it was there. Inside the cave, the group discovers a huge stash of weapons and chests. The crew celebrates, shouting that the dwarves left everything behind. While they gather the loot, the prince watches in silence with his arms crossed. When he tries to grab the strongest weapons, the system tells him his level isn't high enough. He decides to stash the items in his inventory for later. Just a tap and a thought, and the item gets stored. The inventory system works in a simple and practical way. Looking at the minimap again, the kid sees several red dots coming his way. Startled, he yells at everyone to get out right away. A reddish energy starts forming in the middle of the orc group. The built-up mass explodes violently, tossing the creatures aside. Through the rising dust, a red-skinned warrior appears. The general of the Scarlet Lightning tribe says he knew they would come this way. The enemy leader orders his troops to move forward and kill all the invaders. The red warriors charge the recovering group with fury. The fight quickly turns into a massacre, with the prince's allies falling one by one. One of the green orcs gets hit and drops lifeless in front of the kid. Determined not to stay still, the prince tries to grab kills for experience. He runs toward an enemy, already fighting another ally. He jumps and lands a blow with all his strength, but to his surprise, the sword blade snaps when it hits the opponent's shoulder. The red warrior slowly turns his head and fixes his glowing eyes on him. Terrified, the kid turns and bolts in a desperate sprint. During the run, he trips over a stone on the cave floor. He lands on his back and starts crawling, trying to get away. A system notification pops up saying his health is critical. The enemy comes closer, roaring, ready to deliver the final blow. With his eyes closed, the prince screams, waiting for the finishing blow. At the last second, Karak steps in front of him and blocks the strike. The orc guard shouts for his prince to move right away. They clash in a brutal fight in the middle of the hall, the 2 warriors facing off. He watches with trembling hands, reminding himself it's just a game. The experience feels too real, and he decides he needs to stop. He tries to pull up the menu, but nothing shows up. He looks for skills and suddenly notices he hasn't unlocked any yet. He's confused because there are no control options at all. There isn't even a quit button to get out of the virtual reality. A creepy feeling hits him, like maybe he's stuck inside the game. Far away, the enemy general wipes out the last of the allied orcs. The red tribe leader gathers a massive amount of energy in his hand. He shoots a beam straight at the defenseless prince. The blast throws the young man into total despair, convinced he can't die there no matter what. The attack slams into him full force, carving a huge wound in his chest. The explosion hurls him backward with a strong push. He falls, gasps for air, and his vision starts to fade. The general walks over slowly, still panting from the attack. He gathers more energy, ready to finish the job. The status screen shows the prince's HP dropping to 0, confirming his death. Alone, the prince wakes up in a dark, completely empty space. He looks around, confused, sure that the orcs had beaten him. In the panic, he starts to wonder if this means he's dead. All of a sudden, a bright golden light pops up in the middle of the darkness. A mysterious voice calls him a destined being and tells him to conquer. An ethereal woman shows up, telling him to enslave and then rule. He can't react, just stands speechless in front of the apparition and its orders. The light grows brighter and wraps around the prince's whole body. Time in the cave rewinds back to the start of the battle, with the red orcs. Again, the enemy troops brutally massacre his allies. From a distance, the general watches the fight with his soldiers. The enemy tribe leader mocks how stupid it is to face them while outnumbered. He orders his warriors to charge forward and wipe everyone out fast. Then he spots a strange light and wonders if that's an awakening. Right before his eyes, the prince reappears, wrapped in a golden aura. A system notification pops up, saying he just got the telekinesis skill. He doesn't know how, but the young man suddenly realizes he's learned something. In his status screen, a new piece of info shows up, leaving him surprised. Now the character has the subclass Knight of Conquest. Infuriated, the enemy general tells his soldiers to kill him right away. Karak, still alive, looks at the prince with total disbelief. The few remaining allies gather, shouting that he can't be hurt. Creatures form a protective circle around the young man to keep him safe. He looks at the broken dagger in his hand while checking the status. The new subclass isn't part of any options from the original game. The mystery of where that power came from keeps him intrigued. Suddenly, he drives the broken sword into the ground. Spells echo in his mind like he's always known them, and he uses them to boost his allies. The skill's effect powers up the warriors, making each one overflow with strength. Fueled by the new power, the orcs move forward. One of the boosted fighters lands a single punch and crushes the opponent. Now the creatures fight with fresh vigor, dominating the battlefield. In no time, the tide turns and the prince's allies take control. Incredulous, the enemy general watches his soldiers fall one after another. To him, the whole situation looks absurd and inexplicable. He scans the chaos, looking for where that sudden power came from. At last, the camera shifts back to the prince, still shining with a golden glow. In a rage, the general calls forth 3 crystals and hurls them toward the boy. Even as the attack comes at him, the prince stays completely unafraid. Karak jumps forward, stepping in to block the powerful spell. Boosted by the buff, he pushes himself into the fight and shouts for the prince to move forward. Pouring all his energy into a charge, the orc warrior slams into the enemy general. He tries to call for a pause, but it's already too late. With one precise move, Karak ends the opposing general. The enemy's lifeless body drops to the cave floor, startling his soldiers. The remaining warriors panic, yet they're ordered not to run. A system notification declares that the victory credits go to the king. 3 level-up notices pop up for the boy, and the surprised prince stares at the ridiculous amount of experience he just earned. Karak looks at his own glowing hand, wondering where that power came from. Seeing the prince's smile, he thinks the boy might be the source of it all. Back at the camp, the orcs celebrate the win around the campfire. Inside the tent, the young man frantically looks for the logout button in the menu, trying to stay calm while weighing 2 possible theories. The first idea is that a critical bug has trapped him inside the virtual reality, and the second, as crazy as it sounds, is that this is actually reality, not a game. Maybe he was pulled into the story or an identical world, and the realistic situations and aware NPCs make him suspect that. Even stranger is the lack of any usual game censorship, and the thought of actually dying there scares him. Struggling to keep his sanity, he reminds himself that he was born a privileged prince. Then Karak shows up at the tent entrance, asks why the prince wants a practice duel, and explains that he needs to know his level to plan for the future. With that, he grabs a wooden sword for training, and, saying there's nothing to worry about, the orc promises to go easy. The prince scolds him for talking back to royalty, then demands a real fight and steps forward to strike first. Karak lifts his weapon, ready to strike. The first attack misses, failing to hit the target. The young man's series of attacks also has no effect. It feels like a tiny pebble trying to fight a rock, just depressing. With one swing of his weapon, Karak hurls him far away into the wind. Landing on his knees, the young man feels the orc's concern, as the orc apologizes for using too much force. Soon, a system notification pops up saying he's learned the basic swordsmanship skill. He wonders when he actually learned how to handle a sword. Suddenly, a memory surfaces, giving him clarity on how that world works. Just like with telekinesis, he realizes he can gain new skills by taking direct hits. He suggests stopping the training, but the leader cuts him off and firmly says no. With a confident grin, he says this is just the beginning. Sutra moves forward fast, swinging his sword for a fresh attack. The prince's blade smashes into the orcs, sending sparks flying from the impact. Karak watches, surprised, realizing his opponent's moves have gotten a lot better. He wonders why the boy seemed so clumsy at first, since nobody improves that quickly out of nowhere. The swords clash again, and the sound echoes across the training field. Crouching low, the young man slides across the ground, staying fully focused on his opponent. With a challenging grin, he asks if his performance isn't half bad now. Then the prince asks the orc's level, and the orc says he last checked it at 21. Sutra repeats the number quietly, thinking about the info. A status window shows his own level is 7, but he believes he can catch up soon. Unlike him, the people of that world need an appraisal spell to see their levels. Seeing your own stats and freely assigning points is a huge advantage. During the fight, the boy leaps at his opponent with his sword raised. In the airborne attack, he lines up a precise strike against Karak. A thought of just getting stronger pops up, but he tosses it aside right away. What really counts is being able to level up way faster than everyone else. This tale is part of the demonic arc in the Book Knight saga. The story follows Zephyr as he tries to beat his siblings and claim the Demon King throne. Even though a lot happens later, the key point is his rise to the throne. The turning point comes in year 517, when Zephyr slays all his siblings to achieve his goal. The word all hints that he'll also die, but since it's currently year 512, there's still time. Our top priority is to stop that future, and the best shot is to outmatch Zephyr's power. Karak spots him and asks what he's doing, while the prince wonders if something went down. He recalls an important meeting set for today, which leaves the kid confused. His guard rushes over, saying everyone's waiting, but he doesn't seem to recall the appointment. The two reach a camp that's ringed by a wooden fence. Sitting at the table, the prince lets out an awkward laugh in front of everyone. Two people in front comment, surprised he showed up early. The seventh prince, Chris Moonlight, tells him not to be so formal because they're brothers. The eighth princess, Caitlin Moonlight, says it's just politeness since it's their first meeting. Chris suggests just using his name, and the boy awkwardly agrees. They're the kids of Elaine Moonlight, the fourth queen and leader of the lycanthropes, and also a huge source of trouble in the game. 1 year before the massacre, a crucial event completely flips their destiny. Both end up dead, killed by Zephyr and the other Demon King's children. The tragedy ties to a secret about Caitlin Moonlight's birth. The truth is, the princess is an illegitimate daughter. Caitlin scolds him for fighting off plan, and the kid tries to explain, saying he didn't expect to run into enemies. The princess decides to check him over to make sure he's okay. She steps close and checks for injuries, leaving him surprised by the unexpected move. His sister warns him to be more careful, reminding him he's still the weakest of them all. Sutra apologizes. He wonders why she's so concerned, finding it odd to see that kind of closeness among the Demon King's kids. Chris also warns him he'll get a serious scolding if he does something risky again. He wonders inside if his siblings might actually be kind at heart. Ignaz stays thoughtful, trying to process the whole weird situation. A memory of the lycanthropes, who master aura, makes him wonder if he could learn that too, just like he did with other skills. He turns to his brother and says he's got a favor to ask. With a confident grin, he asks Chris to give him a hit. Both react with pure shock at the request. The scene flips from the sunny camp to a bleak landscape. Rocky mountains stretch under a reddish, lifeless sky. In the heat of battle, Demon General Bandel punches an enemy high into the air. The chaotic field shows orcs battling an army of red-skinned demons. He twists his body and attacks several foes at once, Two demons move forward to strike him. Bandel lands a devastating blow on another enemy, sending him flying far away. One of the soldiers manages to pierce the general's arm with a blade. Infuriated by the wound, Bandel glares at the enemy. The creature recoils in pure terror. He slams the ground hard, sending out a shockwave that hits everyone nearby. He orders that no enemy be spared and promises a reward to whoever gets the most kills. The orc army charges in fury, brandishing axes at their foes. Successive explosions light up the mountain battle scene. Sutra finds himself alone in a dark, empty space, not knowing how he got there. A woman with long white hair and a mysterious gaze appears in a golden light. The prince turns, noticing two shadowy silhouettes forming. He wonders who those figures are, since he doesn't recall them from the Night Saga story. The woman we saw earlier shows up right behind the boy, and he gives her a suspicious stare. Surprise and confusion flash across Sutra's face as the weird stuff unfolds. All of a sudden, a bright golden light floods the whole area. The prince lies in a bed, opens his eyes and looks up at the ceiling, totally disoriented. He sits up, puts a hand on his head, and wonders if it was all just a dream. Karak shows up next to him and asks if he woke up, which makes the boy let out a scared scream. Sutra jumps back on the bed, startled, while the orc just says he looks fine. Karak asks why the prince told the princess to hit him, and notes that he kept mumbling after that. Sutra looks at himself, confused, and sees a faint aura of power around his body. A notification pops up confirming he reached level 1 aura, and he celebrates finally feeling it. The guard asks if you can really awaken an aura just by getting hit by it. The prince nods, saying that's basically how it works. He explains that the sudden energy he showed against the Thunder tribe fits, and Sutra admits that was exactly what he thought. He asks if anything happened while he was asleep, and the orc says yes. Karak tells him the main force also beat the Thunder tribe, which leaves the prince confused. Sutra thinks he and his siblings were that main force, but the guard corrects him and asks if he knows who is actually in charge. They reveal the name General Bandel, and the prince reacts with instant shock. A memory from the game flashes through his mind. Bandel was one of the strongest and also one of his favorite subordinates. Suddenly, a realization makes his eyes widen. If Bandel hasn't joined Zephyr yet, that means there's an opening. With a sly smile, the young man decides he'll recruit him before anyone else. He knows everything about the general, his likes, rewards, and talents, thanks to what he remembers from the game. But he also knows the key to winning him over will be beating him in a straight-up duel. Convinced he can snag him as an ally before Zephyr does, Sutra decides it's worth a shot. He says firmly that his first move will be to make General Bandel his new subordinate. In Caitlyn's camp, a shout of surprise rings through the tents. Sutra shows a sphere of energy to his siblings, who gasp in shock when they see he hit the first level of aura expulsion in just one day. He smiles because the result was expected. He put all his points into the new skill. It wasn't a reckless choice, since aura boosts physical abilities and ends up more useful than telekinesis. Chris still doubts it's possible and asks if his brother's Gandharva race might have something to do with it. Then the older brother asks if he can make an underground map, which leaves the boy confused. He says no, but mentions he has a mini-map and asks for a pen and paper to sketch what he sees. Outside, the military camp goes on with its usual routine. With the map done, Chris cheers him on, calling him a genius and giving him a hug. Caitlyn explains that now the enemies are down, they can use the underground tunnels that the rest of the tribe doesn't know about. Chris turns to his younger brother and says there's another job he needs to do. The scene shifts to green mountains under a sunny sky, where an orc patrol moves through the forest. The prince asks if the mission is just to scout the area again. One soldier says it's good to have reinforcements, and another replies it's all thanks to their hard work. As they move forward, the group runs into two hooded figures blocking the way. He recognizes his sister Caitlyn and her attendant hidden under the hoods. He asks why they're in disguise, but the princess hushes him with a gesture. Caitlin says she's secretly following him to keep him safe, just in case something goes wrong. She adds she'll only step in if real danger shows up, so the credit stays with him. The other figure says she's Sarah, the aide, and the prince greets her. The princess tells him not to worry, saying they'll go with him, and the young man agrees. The group reaches the entrance of a dark, cold cave high in the mountains. They walk into the underground tunnel in a single file. One orc wonders why the caves are empty, guessing the dwarves took all the valuable stuff. He recalls the weapons they found earlier, and Karak says they probably weren't seen as valuable. The patrol moves deeper into the dark cave, lighting the way with a torch. He hears a sound coming closer, and Shutra says he hears it too. On the mini-map, several moving dots show up heading their way, confirming enemies are near. He opens his inventory to get ready, and a light spell potion pops up, something he brought just for moments like this. He tells the guard to tell everyone to close their eyes when he signals, and they both take positions at the cave entrance, waiting for what comes next. Dozens of red-eyed pears glow deep in the darkness, and a swarm of stone spiders with paralyzing venom bursts out of the tunnel. Shutra shouts for everyone to close their eyes right away. He tosses the light potion toward the charging monsters. The glass shatters in midair, letting all that bright energy burst out. A huge blast lights up the whole cave. The monsters scream in pain, totally confused by the sudden flash. He tells everyone to attack, saying the spiders are useless once they see light. The orc squad rushes in angry, hitting the now vulnerable monsters. Every warrior slashes the stone spiders with their sharp blades. The rest of the group jumps in, crushing the creatures with their axes. Shutra watches the fight from afar, his aura glowing around him. A quick glance at the map shows that stone spiders always hunt in packs. The map shows a big central dot, meaning each swarm has a leader. He tells Karak to come with him to take down the boss, and the guard nods. They cut a path through the swarm while the other orcs keep fighting. They move deeper into the cave, leaving the main fight behind. The pair finally spots a giant multi-eyed spider, the group's leader. The orc jumps in fury, raising his axe to strike the creature. The axe hits the monster's head, but bounces off with a bright flash, doing no damage. Karak is confused that his strongest swing did nothing. The blade barely scratches the creature's shell, which is as hard as steel. He sighs, remembering his weapon can't pierce that shell. He knows the monster hates fire, but he hasn't mastered fire magic yet. The giant spider fixes on the orc, who jumps back in fear. The creature looms over the warrior, getting ready for a deadly strike. He yells at Karak to use fire, but the guard sighs, wondering where he could find any. A mysterious voice echoes, telling Shutra to raise his sword. The prince's sword bursts into golden flames, and he's amazed by the power. He can barely believe he's holding real magic. His sister Caitlin shows up, admitting she gave him the spell, and asks if that's enough for the fight. The giant spider lunges, fangs wide, to attack the boy. Flaming sword in hand, Shutra spins and gets ready for the showdown. The prince locks eyes with the creature's many eyes, looking determined. The creature lands a heavy blow that makes the cave floor shake and crack. With a quick jump, the boy dodges and readies his own attack while airborne. His special move, Burning Blade, slices the enemy, leaving a trail of fire. The blade's flames wrap the giant spider, causing a fiery explosion. He sees the monster's remains still burning on the cave floor. A crackling golden aura surrounds the young man after the win. Level up notifications pop up around him as the energy boosts him. A status window opens, showing he finally hit level 9. Caitlin comes over and asks about the weird light that came from him. He dodges the question, saying it's like a blessing from his Gandharva roots. His sister pushes him about his skill against those beasts, and he lies, saying he read about them in books. Karak cuts in and points the group towards something deeper in the cave. They discover a big metal door carved into the stone wall. The double doors swing open slowly, revealing a new passage. The team walks into a wide stone hall lit by torches. Shutra looks at the floor, surprised and recognizing something. He spots a huge glowing magic circle on the floor and says it's a city portal. The guard asks if he knows what it is, and the prince says he has a hunch. He notes the floor pattern looks dwarven. He remembers playing as the hero and seeing portals, but never a Zephyr. He figures out that if they pour mana into that nearby orb, it should fire up the portal. He looks at his sister and tells her it could be a portal, which leaves her surprised. Caitlin nods to the idea and suggests they check the inscriptions to find out where the portal leads. Karek calls the prince over and points at the letters carved into the plaque on the wall. Shutra and his sister step closer to read the inscription. They recognize the letters as dwarven characters, not the usual demonic script. When Karek asks, the princess says she can't read dwarven writing. Sarah also says she can't make sense of the text. Suddenly, Caitlin reads out loud, Jishka Mountains, Portal 2. She keeps reading and finds it's linked to Portal 3. Shutra looks confused, not getting how he can read dwarven writing. A system notification pops up, telling him he just learned the dwarven language skill. He's surprised, realizing he picked up a new skill without any training. Incredulous, the bodyguard asks if he can really read it, and the prince nods with a smile. His sister asks since when he's understood dwarven writing, and what else is on the plaque. Shutra translates the bottom of the plaque, saying they need to infuse mana to fire up the portal. He then asks his sister to try pouring some mana in. She wonders why he won't do it himself. He gives a weak excuse, saying he's still clumsy, and the princess finally agrees to do it. Caitlin puts her hand on the stone orb, and it starts glowing with a bright blue light. The energy sphere pulses with power as the portal appears in the hall. Soon, a big holographic map of the Jishka Mountains rises out of the orb. It shows their current spot and Portal 3, and the prince says there must be dwarven tunnels there. Karek sees the advantage because the enemy tribe is in front of the mountains, letting them strike from behind. The princess decides to call it a day and talk over the new info with her brother. Back at camp, the portal discovery leaves everyone surprised and pumped about the new chance. Chris hugs his brother with excitement, calling him a real blessing to the group. The elder offers a reward, promising to give the boy anything he wants. Even as he tries to refuse, the younger brother feels pressure from his older brother's push. He ends up asking if he can make a weird request, and Chris gets even more curious. Shutra finally says he wants to learn the beast god's fist technique. His brother is totally shocked by the request, his face turning serious. He explains that, at his level, he still can't handle weapons well, but martial techniques are a different story. The beast god's fist is a powerful S-rank martial art, passed down only through the lycanthrope royal family. Seeing his brother's reaction, Shutra backs off, saying he gets it if it's a tough ask, acting like he expected a no. To his surprise, Chris agrees to teach him, leaving the boy speechless. He makes it clear that, of course, he can't share the family's secret techniques. Even so, he offers to teach the aura part, and the prince asks excitedly if that's true. Smiling, the older brother asks if that's a good enough gift, but the younger stays silent. Shutra quickly gestures, insisting the gift is perfect just as it is. Chris calls his name to get his full attention. He then asks if, from now on, he can call him a true brother. The word brother catches Shutra off guard, and he thinks about what that new bond means and how heavy those words feel. With a slight smile, Shutra says he likes the idea of being brothers. They shake hands, sealing the start of their new alliance. Chris and Caitlin look at their new ally with satisfied, confident smiles. He smiles back and suggests they team up from now on. A system notification confirms a normal alliance has been formed with Chris and Caitlin Moonlight. The scene shifts to a mountain range under a late afternoon sky. In the Scarlet Thunder Tribe camp, activity stays intense between the tents. Two red-skinned warriors stand guard at one of the entrances. One of the guys jokes that nobody would have shown up there without a good reason. The shot shows a figure kneeling on a magic circle, and the guard brings up our princess. They point out that the prisoner is the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade. A quick glance at his stats shows his charisma is lower than the rest. While sitting in his tent, the prince sees that, unlike his other stats, charisma only goes up by 1 point each level now. He wonders why, since in the original game appearance and charisma were two different things. Appearance measured beauty, and charisma measured how pleasant a character seemed to others. He rolls with the change, because his overall growth has been solid so far. More importantly, he's about to hit level 10 and expects a big boost. In Night Saga, Zephyr and Locke each got a level in their special skills when they hit level 10. He thinks the same will happen to him, but Carrack calls out from the tent entrance and cuts him off. He gets word that everything's set for departure, and the prince confirms they're leaving. Carrack notes the young man's good mood, but he says nothing special went down. They step out of the tent and join the orc army waiting outside. The troops line up in front of their leader, ready for orders. With a confident grin, Kshatriya orders everyone to start marching. They head toward a mountain range under a clear blue sky. The trek brings them back to the entrance of the rocky cave they explored earlier. Inside, orcs and lycans fight side by side against the remaining spiders. The troops push forward, clearing a path to the big metal door at the tunnel's end. Kshatriya's group reaches the portal hall, and others are already waiting there. The oldest prince asks the lycan mages about how the investigation wrapped up. One of the wolf-like mages confirms the portal links to the Eska River in the Jishka Mountains. He assures there are no issues, and says the dwarven construction is, as always, super sturdy. Chris smiles at the news and tells everyone to get ready to move forward. Both mages place their hands over the orb, channeling energy to fire it up. The stone sphere glows bright with a strong bluish light. A big oval portal opens in the middle of the room, revealing a rocky landscape on the other side. Carrack and the prince watch the scene in awe. Kshatriya can hardly believe he's seeing a real working portal right in front of him. His sister rushes him, asking what's holding him back from crossing over. He darts to join the group, eager to see what's waiting. As they step through the portal, the team comes out into a new area, surrounded by reddish rocks. He looks at the rocky landscape, totally confused by what he sees. From a cliff top, the group spots a massive enemy camp set up in the valley. Chris nods with satisfaction, confirming they've found the main camp just as expected. He estimates about 5,000 troops and says the rear attack should focus on destroying the supplies. The plan is simple. Bandal distracts the front while infiltration units torch the food depots. One of the hooded attendants pipes up, saying something feels off about the movement. Looking closer, they see there aren't enough troops in the camp and wonder if an attack has already started. A distant noise catches Kshatriya's attention, and he stays on high alert. Carrack notes the sound seems to be coming from a battle far away. Chris tells the boy to channel his aura into his eyes so he can see better. He concentrates, channeling his energy into his vision. Using the aura, he can see a fight happening far away between two groups. Caitlin spots the Thunder tribe, but can't tell who the other side is. They're not General Bandal's men. Kshatriya notes the fight is too small to be a full-scale army clash. His enhanced vision shows a white-haired figure fighting alone against several warriors of the enemy tribe. The fighter defends herself fiercely, taking on multiple enemies at once. They watch in silence, and one of them says the fighters look like dark elves. Caitlin turns to her younger brother, who confirms the warrior's identity and says they ride drakes. He gestures toward the battlefield and says the enemy troops are pulling back. The tribe's fighters bolt away fast, making us think their commander got taken down. They're left confused, not getting why the battle stopped so suddenly. Kshatriya sits quiet, trying to picture what the dark elves could be up to there. Back at camp, the sun dips behind the tents and the wooden fence. A hologram of General Bandal pops up, telling us he heard they discovered the dwarven portal. He compliments the prince's army and wonders how they knew about the portal. Chris credits Kshatriya for everything, but the kid says it was just plain luck. Bandal talks to the ninth prince, promising that this time he'll get a proper reward at the Demon King's castle. He switches topics and asks the general about the little clash that went down in front of the Thunder Tribe's camp. He says it was probably the Dark Elves who jumped into the fight on their own. He wonders if they were reinforcements from the castle, but Bandal says their plan to link up with the main army fell apart. The general's hologram stays steady as he warns there's a bigger problem. Chris asks what it is, and Bandal reveals the leader of the independent Dark Elf unit got captured by the Scarlet Thunder tribe. Kshatriya jumps in, curious about who the commander is, and gets a serious answer that it's someone we all know well. The hologram flickers, showing the leader's name, the 6th Princess Felicia Doomblade, our sister. The news freezes Chris and Caitlin, their faces full of shock. The 6th Princess Felicia Doomblade is Sylvia Doomblade's daughter, the 3rd Queen of the Dark Elves and twin sister to the 5th Prince. Kshatriya recalls that in the game, Felicia belonged to the 4th Princess's faction, which always made her an enemy in his mind. Seeing her now makes us wonder if she's trying to meddle for her own gain. Chris asks out loud if the Scarlet Thunder tribe even knows the captured Dark Elf is Felicia. Through the hologram, Bandal says they haven't been able to confirm that yet. Kshatriya asks about the plan, and the general says a rescue will only happen if they get attacked first. He firmly says he won't bow or negotiate with them. He agrees and promises to collect more data before reaching out again, ending the call. When the hologram fades, the 3 of them are left alone in the room. Chris cracks a smile and jokes about how their brilliant older sister is now a prisoner. Caitlin looks at him and says if Felicia's alive, they have to rescue her, but her brother warns it won't be easy. The princess argues a rescue could cause heavy losses for the group. Still, she grabs his arm and insists they have to save her because she's their sister. He stays silent, watching the scene with a serious look. He admits he gets how tough the choice is, but says they need to look at the facts. He stays quiet, just following the siblings' reactions. Up in a mountain military camp, the leaders get together to plan the strategy. Inside the tent, Chris stands at the head of the table and says the plan is simple. Holding a map, he explains that once General Bandal pulls the main enemy force out, they'll hit the camp from behind. He says he'll move to the base's center, while Caitlin and Sutra lead their own squads on the mission. Sutra cuts in to ask if the goal is the rescue, and the prince nods, adding they'll first torch the armory and the food depot. He decides everyone should pull back right away if things get dangerous, because they can't lose more lives for Felicia. The princess reacts to her brother's words, but Chris cuts her off, demanding quiet and reminding her he's the commander. Upset, Caitlin shouts that Felicia is family, but he just stares at her, saying nothing. He sees the 7th prince doesn't seem to want to rescue their sister at all. Under the night sky, the attack kicks off. The troops move through the mountain terrain toward the target. With a loud shout, the demon army charges forward with full force. The order to wipe out everyone from the Scarlet Thunder tribe is reinforced. From the top of a cliff, they watch the enemy camp. From that high spot, he studies how the tents circle a big central bonfire. Tribe guards patrol the perimeter between the lit torches and the tents. He waits for the agreed signal to start the attack, eyes locked on the target. Boom, big explosions slammed into the camp's main force, kicking off the first part of the plan. The surprise attack threw the Scarlet Thunder tribe, warriors into total chaos. He marched his army across the battlefield and led the charge. He yelled at his troops to kill every enemy right away. Out far away, Carrick asked Kshatriya why they weren't moving yet, but the prince told him to wait for the signal. In the middle of the fight, orcs and demons were locked in brutal combat. Bandal's troops slammed into the enemy defenses with full force. The tribe's general, shocked by the attack, watched the enemy forces get closer. He fell quiet for a moment, sizing up how intense the attack was. Then he ordered a retreat, and the troops started pulling back through the fire. From the cliff top, the Lycan prince watched the chaos spread through the camp just like they planned. Seeing the chance, Chris turned to the squad and told everyone to get ready to move forward. Shutra told his group they had to stick to the plan exactly. When the signal came, Chris led the charge, and the group ran toward the enemy camp. The sudden rush caught the tribe guards completely off guard in the middle of the confusion. The Lycan warriors leapt onto their foes, clearing a path with sheer violence. During the run, Caitlin shouted at Shutra to be careful, and he told her to do the same. Without stopping, the young prince checked the holographic map to figure out where he was in the camp. He pointed the way and told his squad to move left toward the food depot. Leading the charge, Karak reminded his warriors to take out anyone who crossed their path. In the heat of the fight, one of Bandal's demons blocked an attack and knocked the enemy down with a single blow. He pushed forward again, smashing another opponent with full force. He saw a new threat coming and paused for a beat. He tossed a dagger that hit the target right in the head before the demon could get close. That precise move showed off his new dagger-throwing skill. He flashed a quick, confident smile after the hit and kept moving forward. He asked, not really knowing when he learned that. Shutra said it was nothing special and pushed the group onward. He wanted to know if they should set it on fire, and the prince said yes, keep going with the plan. He suddenly realized Felicia might be trapped inside and could die in the flames. He changed his mind, warned they needed to find her first, and asked Karak to hold up a moment. He turned on a holographic map to try to pinpoint her exact spot. His special skill should mark Felicia as a neutral character, showing her location on the map. As soon as a point lit up on the screen, he knew he had found her. He shouted for Karak to follow and sprinted toward the direction the system indicated. When they got to a tent, he barged right in without hesitation to check inside. He scanned for his sister until a voice called his name. He turned in surprise toward the sound. The tent revealed Felicia Doomblade kneeling on the floor, chained inside a circle of energy. She stared at him and asked exactly why he was there. He said the place was dangerous and they needed to get out fast. Felicia just watched him in silence while he tried to free her from the restraints. As soon as he got her out, he led her out of the tent and said they had to meet up with Chris and Caitlin. Surprised, she stopped and asked if the other two siblings had also come to rescue her. He confirmed it and wondered if that wasn't what they were supposed to do, leaving her without an answer. When the princess started to explain, Karak showed up shouting that enemies were coming from all sides. He told her to follow him, and she agreed to go with him to escape. The elf noticed the change in how he was treating her, and asked since when he'd been calling her by her name. Without answering, he kept running away from the danger, leaving her behind for a moment. Suddenly, she saw something odd and shouted for him to look back. Before he could react, an energy blast slammed into his chest full force from behind. The hit threw him forward as he tried to resist the blow. He hit the ground, and Felicia yelled his name as the fire wrapped around him. The flames from the attack spread across the camp floor, lighting up the chaos around them. Desperate, the princess called out for Sutra again, watching the mess but unable to help. Soon, the demon that had attacked him turned toward her and moved forward. The elf stared him down hard, showing no fear. Suddenly, something moved behind the enemy. An energy blast erupted right there, catching everyone off guard. Felicia watched, amazed, as a silhouette rose up in the flames. The figure stepped forward, wrapped in a fierce energy aura. He turned out to be Sutra, now holding an energy bow as new powers showed up. With the new power, he flashed a confident smile at his foes. He shot a single arrow that exploded in the middle of the enemy ranks with huge force. Right after that, he readied another shot, still smiling. Sutra kept the attack going, firing several arrows at once at the advancing enemies. The energy bolts hit their targets, causing a chain of explosions. Holding the bow, he celebrated when he realized he was using real magic. Excited, he celebrated the amazing power of the new skill, even though it was only at level 1. Suddenly, a wall of ice rose from the ground and blocked an incoming attack. Confused, he watched the crystals appear out of nowhere to shield him. Soon, an enemy archer showed up on a tower, getting ready to fire another energy arrow. He saw that the real target was Felicia, who was running to check if he was okay. He quickly pushed her away and told her not to get any closer. The princess watched him, confused by her brother's sudden move. At that moment, a rain of ice projectiles fell from the sky toward him. He faced the attack, ready to take the hit. Smiling, he decided that this power would be his too. The ice arrow struck him hard and exploded on impact. A freezing mist spread across the field after the blast. The prince's silhouette stayed visible in the icy smoke. Kshatriya stepped out of the mist, confirming he absorbed the hit and gained the ice arrow skill. His face changed when he saw something weird happening in the system. The blow dragged him across the ground, but he pushed himself up with an ice dagger. Soon, a warning popped up saying his life was in extreme danger. With his energy so low, he knew another hit would kill him. Suddenly, Felicia came over and called out to him, making him look her way. She asked who had asked him to save her, leaving him speechless. She shouted that he was the weakest sibling and couldn't save anyone. Her reaction left him confused and clueless about what was happening. Then she asked when he could even use magic. The enemy was already down, but he realized she had gotten everything wrong. Before he could explain, Felicia pulled the ice dagger out of his chest. He looked down, surprised by his sister's unexpected move. A healing energy flowed out, covering the wound. He watched the glow of the healing power work on his body. In a few seconds, the chest wound closed completely, leaving no trace. A system window popped up, confirming he got the heal skill, and the injury was fully fixed. Felicia asked if he felt better, and Sutra said he did, thanking her for the help and almost mentioning her blood by mistake. Suddenly, a loud noise grabbed their attention, and they turned toward it. A huge creature wrapped in a red aura showed up amid the wreckage. Kshatriya recognized it as a blood ogre, and Felicia asked if they really had to fight that to get out. He nodded confidently as they both watched the monster come toward them. As the ogre moved forward, the two got ready for the fight that was coming. The blood ogre slammed the ground with a punch, making Kshatriya and Felicia leap back to dodge the shock. Kshatriya was shocked by how fast the monster moved, even though it was huge. Right after that, the princess begged him to buy some time so she could cast a spell, but he wondered how he could do that. Then another strike shattered the ground, and they both had to fall back out of range. Determined, the young man said he would draw the enemy's focus and yelled for her to get the magic ready, using a phrase that Felicia didn't get. At that point, he called out to Karak, who answered from a distance and said to use the same plan as before. Without missing a beat, the prince opened his inventory and searched for a particular item. When the window opened, he saw that he could finally equip the dwarven dagger he had saved. The moment he chose it, the dagger appeared in his hand, glowing with energy. He aimed the blade at the ground and got ready to trigger a skill. He thrust the dagger into the earth and unleashed a strong wave of energy. Then he shouted the technique's name and sent the energy toward his teammate. A fierce aura wrapped around the orc's body, boosting his power. Now powered up, Karak roared and readied himself for the fight. The display shocked the blood ogre, making it pause for a moment. Feeling stronger, the warrior charged straight at the enemy. The creature swung a crushing punch, but he blocked it with his axe. The hit forced the monster to stagger back for a few seconds, surprised by the force. Right away, Karak seized the opening and lifted his weapon for a counter-strike. Using all his built-up power, he landed a precise strike to the ogre's chest. The creature let out a painful roar as the damage pierced its body. Meanwhile, Felicia started to float, surrounded by a shimmering aura. Her hair floated around her as she gathered energy and readied the spell. Then she cast a spell that coated the ground with a slippery slime. The blood ogre tried to move forward, but its feet slipped on the slick surface. Losing its balance, the monster toppled onto its back with a thud. The orc grabbed the chance and jumped high, landing above the enemy. From up there, he shouted that this would be the end of the fight. Then he came down with a crushing strike to the creature's chest. Hit with full force, the ogre let out a final roar before falling. The final blow shattered its body, ending the threat for good. With the win secured, Sutra walked through the wrecked camp among the debris. Smiling with relief, he celebrated the victory, even though other foes were still out there. Suddenly, an energy aura surrounded him, and a system notification grabbed his attention. Soon a window popped up in front of him, showing new information. The notice said his level had risen to 10, and he celebrated the upgrade. Another message showed up right after, saying his main skill level had also gone up. With a satisfied grin, he felt the new power flow through his whole body. A new gift window appeared, and he chose to open the box to see the reward. The notification showed a passive skill that lowers the accuracy of incoming projectiles, and he instantly recognized it as a deflection technique against ranged attacks. The screen displayed the skill with a picture of a character dodging many shots at once, and he realized he could now copy the famous hero protection effect. At that moment, a group of enemy warriors showed up in the camp, moving to attack, and the princess called his name, warning that the foes were coming while he was distracted. Without hesitation, Felicia got ready to unleash her power on the enemies. With a command, she summoned a gale that slammed the group, and the wind was so strong the prince had to steady himself to avoid being blown away. Watching the scene, he thought it looked like magic, but it wasn't exactly that. He soon saw the energy butterflies and realized it was spirit power, and that Felicia was actually a skilled spirit summoner. As he watched the attack, a new idea popped into his head. Smiling, he wondered if he could also get hit by that kind of power. Suddenly, a flare burst in the sky, grabbing everyone's attention, and the bright flash made the orcs look up, surprised by the sudden event. When he saw the light, Carrick told them it was a retreat signal. Confused, Kshatriya asked what was going on and if someone was in danger. With his allies pressing for orders, the prince told them to pull back with all the troops, then said he needed to go to Caitlin, leaving the orc totally surprised. Carrick tried to argue to go with him, but Kshatriya said there was a reason for the decision and everyone had to obey. Then Felicia stepped forward and said she would go with him, surprising the orc general, and she added she didn't like owing favors and wanted to take the chance to settle her debt. She also mentioned she still had unfinished business with those enemies. Carrick listened quietly, then agreed and told the prince to be careful before saying goodbye. So while we were strolling through the camp, Felicia asked if we really had to go to Caitlin, and he said the retreat order seemed shady. She then pointed out that he looked super worried about his sister. Kshatriya just said it's normal to worry when it's family. After that, she just watched him quietly for a bit. Suddenly, the sound of battle from the middle of the camp cut us off. Then a pack of massive demons charged at us in a frenzy. In the chaos, Caitlin took on the enemies solo, punching them back. Even surrounded, she held her ground, ready for the fight. Then she fired a bunch of energy balls that blew up on the foes. The demons tried to push back and got ready to strike together. Without missing a beat, Caitlin conjured an energy sword in her hand. She leapt precisely and slashed, hitting every enemy at once. Kshatriya and Felicia showed up just in time to see the demons lying on the ground after the counter. Seeing that, the mage said it was exactly what she expected, and he realized there was nothing to worry about. When she saw them, the princess asked her brother why they didn't retreat, and he said he came to help her. She didn't quite get it and asked what he meant. Then, Caitlin suddenly focused on the person next to him. The 8th princess shouted with joy, ran and gave Felicia a tight hug, telling her she was glad to see her safe. Felicia said it was fine, and that her younger sister worries a lot. Watching them, Kshatriya realized the two were really close. Right then, a map popped up in his mind, showing the enemy troops moving forward. After checking the map, Caitlin warned they had to pull back and told him to lead the retreat. Later, Carrick's orcs hung around a huge teleport portal, and soon someone stepped into the middle of the magic circle. Kshatriya, Felicia, and Caitlin walked through the portal as the orcs stared silently. While walking, the 6th princess asked if the prince really found the portal, and Caitlin confirmed his part in the mission. At the same time, Carrick came over and remarked how much he'd changed. Chris's voice cut in, announcing that everyone made it back safely. Soon after, he showed up in front of the group, looking confident. Smiling, Caitlin told her brother she'd brought Felicia back. Then the princess turned to Chris, greeted him, and said it had been a while since they last met. In front of her, the seventh prince just stared silently for a few seconds. Finally, Chris broke the silence, greeted her back, and called her by name. The scene switched to a dark cave lit by torches on the walls. Walking forward, Chris said General Bandel also won his fight, and Yakuzan pulled back when they saw the camp on fire. Not knowing the name, Kshatriya asked who he was, and Caitlin said he's the chief of the Scarlet Lightning tribe. Then Felicia asked if Yakuzan surrendered, but Chris clarified the enemy just fled and could regroup. He announced they'd attack Kairam's forces tomorrow to stop the two armies from joining up. Switching topics, the prince asked Felicia what brought her there. She said she was studying nearby ruins and got captured while trying to help in the fight. Looking skeptical, Chris asked if that was really true. Felicia snapped back, asking if he thought she was lying. They stared at each other silently for a few moments. After that, he gave in, saying they should drop it and rest. Felicia thanked him and agreed, and Chris sent everyone off to recover their energy. A short while later, the soldiers gathered around a campfire, enjoying their food. Away from the group, Kshatriya looked at his skill window, feeling satisfied. While he was analyzing his moves in a cave corner, someone suddenly called his name. He turned around and saw Felicia at the entrance, asking if she could come in for a moment. He wanted to know why she was there so late, but she just stared silently. Then the princess started walking slowly toward him. When she stopped in front of him, she called his name again. Unexpectedly, she reached out and grabbed his collar tightly. He got totally caught off guard by that sudden move, and the prince couldn't even react. A few seconds later, Felicia stared him down and told him to strip off his clothes. Totally confused, Kshatriya just asked why she wanted him to do that. She grabbed his collar firmly and repeated that he had to take his clothes off. He still didn't get it, so the prince asked why she wanted him to do that. She replied that he wouldn't let his condition be treated right otherwise. He just looked totally confused. Felicia said what she did earlier was just basic first aid. She added that she wanted to use healing magic again because he might have internal injuries. She brought up the glow his body gave off earlier and asked if something was wrong, but he said it just happened now and then. Kshatriya changed the topic and said he had a favor to ask her. He smiled, walked over, and said it was something only Felicia could handle. Right after, 3 new healing abilities showed up in his status screen. Happy with that, the prince got dressed again and checked out his new abilities. The scene showed he learned 3 healing spells after she cast them on him because he asked. A little later, he met Caitlin and said the day of his training finally arrived. She smiled and announced that he would learn the werewolf branch of the Beast Fist style. She explained that Beast Fist is the signature martial art of lycanthropes. Kshatriya got that the werewolf style is the core of that technique, which is why Caitlin is teaching him. Next, she said the style uses both internal and external aura, and she'd show him the basics of internal aura. He followed her cue, closed his eyes, and felt an aura start to appear inside him. He quickly realized he could feel the power flowing through his insides. She described that energy as the life force moving through every part of his body. Later, she revealed that at its peak, aura becomes the very power of the soul. When the energy peaked, Kshatriya opened his eyes right away. A system pop-up then showed that he unlocked the passive skill protagonist's physique. The description said it boosts training efficiency and unlocks special traits as he levels up. Reading it, he realized it was another super powerful skill. A comparison showed the new skill was just as good as his other training passives. He got that the system adds new functions as the skills evolve. A smile spread across his face at the discovery. Clenching his fists, he finally felt what it means to be the protagonist, just as Caitlin called his name. Snapped back to reality, his sister asked what he was doing and he apologized for the distraction. Then she announced that beast fist training would start in earnest. The moment training began, he got the skill and felt aura appear in his fists. Caitlin was impressed by his speed and precision, and praised his basic moves. Looking at his hands, Kshatra felt the power of this new martial art. Just as Caitlin was about to teach the next move, a soldier ran up and shouted at her. The messenger rushed over and said something terrible had happened. Meanwhile, Chris told the group that Kairam's unit had vanished. Everyone gathered around a map and reacted with surprise to the news. Seeing how serious it was, Chris said the enemy must have found the plan, and Caitlin asked what to do next. He then used info from General Bandel to point out the exact spot where Yakuza and Kairam were supposed to meet. After checking the terrain, Kshatra agreed the odds were high and they'd have to take a risk. Then Chris said they'd team up with the general for a big battle against the Scarlet Lightning tribe. The scene switched to the main base of the enemy subjugation army. At the camp, General Bandel gave Chris a warm welcome and praised his arrival. Chris smiled, greeted the general, and said he was still the same as always. When Bandel turned to the princesses, Felicia cut in to ask about her subordinates. Kshatra watched the exchange with a slight smile. Looking at the general, he recalled that Bandel was his favorite character from the game Knight Saga. Soon after, he stepped forward and formally introduced himself to the commander. Bandel stared at him silently for a moment, then shook his hand and recognized him as the 9th prince. All of a sudden, Kshatra's vision flipped and this white-haired woman showed up, wrapped in a bright glow. She let him see her eyes, each a different color, as she stared at him. Then, out of the fire, another figure burst onto the scene. A red-armored warrior stepped forward, fully visible in the blaze. They locked eyes for a beat, not saying a single thing. Quickly, Kshatra realized he was standing right in the middle of those two massive images. The surprise vision totally blew his mind. Then, symbols of conquest and war flashed before his eyes. He jolted awake, finding himself sitting on his bed. He was confused, wondering if it had all just been a dream. He quickly remembered that he'd already seen that woman with the multicolored eyes in a previous vision. Even so, he still couldn't figure out who the red-armored warrior was. Suddenly, Karak cut in, warning that they needed to leave right away. Soon after, the two of them stepped out of the tent and headed toward the army. Outside, the troops rushed around, hauling supplies for the upcoming battle. Kshatra said he was put in charge of the left flank of the formation. The map showed Bandel leading the center, Chris and Caitlin taking the right flank, and the Dark Elves covering the rear. The march kicked off and time flew by. All of a sudden, Kshatra figured out where he was. He was already in the middle of a huge battlefield, surrounded by thousands of soldiers. At the front of the central troops, General Bandel commanded the battle formation to be set up. He smiled and vowed to show the enemies what real suffering feels like. He shouted right away, ordering every soldier to charge the enemy. The orcs answered instantly, marching forward with shields up and weapons ready. The general watched, pleased, as the enemy troops moved toward him. His face shifted when a huge explosion blew up right in the middle of his own troops. Stunned, he shouted out, asking what the heck was happening. He looked down and saw the wreckage spreading fast across the battlefield. Out of nowhere, a massive, fur-covered beast that looked like a mammoth showed up, cutting a path through the ranks. Panicking, Bandel yelled that it was a swamp mammoth. As the beast moved forward, energy blasts slammed into it from every direction. But it quickly became clear those blasts were actually coming from their own allies. The Scarlet Thunder warriors started getting hit by friendly fire. Amid the chaos, Kshatra and Karak watched the devastation spread. He suddenly realized it was a trap and shouted that they'd been fooled. He got that the enemies had known the whole thing from the start, and the mammoths kept moving forward. They called the beast a swamp mammoth of unmatched size. Its red eyes burned with rage, showing a terrifying monster. Facing the threat, an energy aura formed around Kshatra. All of a sudden, sharp claws ripped the ground and new beasts burst out of the earth. Quickly, an army of sword-wielding lizardmen joined the fight. The surprise arrival of those enemy reinforcements shocked Shutra and his troops. On another front, Chris saw that the enemies were just toying with their forces. Caitlin said it would be smarter to pull back and look for another chance. She warned that if they kept going, casualties would just keep rising until they were wiped out. Chris paused in silence for a few moments before deciding. He quickly raised his voice to get the whole army's attention amid the chaos. He told the mages to set up a defensive barrier at the back, while the rest got ready to pull back. Once the order was out, the clash between orcs and lizardmen got even more brutal. During the fight, a lizard warrior lunged at Shutra to attack him. At the last second, an allied orc blocked the strike and saved him. Karak shouted for everyone to keep formation, warning that any slip-up could be deadly. Shutra nodded, realizing this was way more than just a game. So Chris was standing there by himself, surrounded by a bunch of enemies. He let out a loud shout, telling everyone they had to stay alive and come back, no matter what. Later on, the survivors got together again at a makeshift camp. Back at the base, they used healing magic on the wounded to fix up their battle injuries. Inside a tent, Chris owned up to the failure and wished he had been more suspicious earlier. General Bandel said the only choices were to pull back or call for reinforcements. Chris agreed and said he wouldn't risk his team's lives just for pride. Just as he was about to give the order, Felicia cut in, saying she had another idea. She reminded everyone that she was actually there to explore a ruin in the Jishka Mountains. Shutra mentioned that, in the game, the character always focused on research and investigation. Soon after, Felicia spread out an ancient map on the table and pointed to the exact spot. She told the group she had been studying the lair of the Earth Dragon, a ruin that had been preserved for 1,500 years. She explained that Enkidu, a magma-born dragon, used several guardians to protect his treasure. She added that the dwarves got from him a special weapon called the anvil that can summon thunder. She then said the relic could control the guardian chimeras and unleash magic on a massive scale. She slammed her hand on the table firmly for everyone to hear. Finally, Felicia said the only way to win was to find that relic. With that, General Bandal asked Felicia where the anvil was, showing that it was why he was there. Right after, Chris Moonlight admitted he didn't know the exact location, which wasn't much help then. He said they couldn't risk everyone's lives on a simple treasure hunt, because the enemy could strike at any moment. Felicia immediately pushed back against Chris's objection. Then Sutra stepped up and promised everyone that the relic was definitely there. He explained that he found references to the anvil in an old story about the hero Locke and in his rune studies. Above all, he said he completely trusted Felicia. The princess watched him silently, not saying a thing. He turned his back to the others and stood beside her. Even so, Chris stepped in and argued that the problem wasn't trust, but the valuable time they were wasting. To counter, Sutra pointed at the map and cited a similar legend from the Gandharva tribe about that area. From that, he concluded there was a strong chance the ruins' entrance was nearby. Finally, he asked them to trust him just this once, promising to risk everything. Soon after, Felicia called forth ghost horses that could fly, and they appeared in the sky above the group. Everyone hopped on the creatures and took off straight toward their destination. As they flew, Sarah thought that at least they had finally started looking for the anvil. At that moment, Karak warned Sutra to hold on tight, but Sutra promised he wouldn't fall. He had ridden those mounts before, and the demon prince then activated a control panel in front of him. Calmly, he told them that at that speed it would take about 1 hour to arrive, and that the mini-map would make finding the ruins easier. While they flew, his eyes drifted toward Felicia, who was a few meters ahead. Soon after, he closed his eyes for a moment, taking it all in. The group kept going, flying over land lit only by the night. Suddenly, Sutra explained he could pinpoint the anvil's location by merging ancient tunnel maps with the current terrain. As soon as he finished, Karak and Caitlin stared at him silently, then asked if it actually worked. When they landed on solid ground, the orc asked what it all meant, but Chris just told Sutra to lead them. At that moment, Felicia stepped in, said she got the explanation, and told him to take the lead. After a short pause, the prince turned and told everyone to follow him. As they walked, the sixth princess watched every detail silently. Soon, Karak noted that everyone was following the prince without question. A little later, the group reached a rock wall and saw the path was blocked. Facing the barrier, Karak asked if he really knew the entrance to the ruins, because it didn't look right. Sutra replied by asking if he ever said they were heading to the entrance. Then he turned to Caitlin and asked her to try opening a passage with a well-aimed strike. So the princess said okay to the request, and Felicia was watching every move like a hawk. A little later, Felicia asked him if he actually thought the relic was hidden inside that cliff. Sutra said confidently that, based on his math, going in through that spot would let them skip a face-to-face with the dungeon guardians. Felicia cut him off, wondering how he expected Caitlin to smash the wall just with her fists. Then she asked if he thought the princess might be some kind of living siege weapon. Felicia's hand started building up a huge burst of energy. She said that anyone who explores ruins always has a backup skill in blowing stuff up. The princess shot that built up energy straight at the rock wall. The blast slammed into the cliff with full force, and the shockwave echoed across the whole area. When the dust settled, a new passage into the ruins opened up right in front of them. Felicia looked at the fresh opening and wondered if they had really found it that fast. The crew walked into the ruins, and Karak asked about the dome-shaped thing in the middle. Sutra said it was the last guard protecting the anvil. Karak thought about smashing it, but Sutra warned that could ruin the relic. Felicia noted there had to be some kind of mechanism to open it. She then looked around the room and instantly saw that the statues looked weird. Out of 9 statues, only 3 were holding weapons. Caitlin said maybe they should give weapons to the rest of the statues, but Felicia wasn't convinced it was that easy. She explained the weapons were made by dwarves, so the other statues would need dwarf-made arms too. Out of nowhere, Sutra said he actually had 6 of those weapons. The demon prince said he couldn't use them earlier because he was low level, so he kept them stored. Then he told Karak that, just in case, he brought the weapons he found on the last expedition into the tunnel. Sutra asked the orc to set the heavy weapons, and Karak grumbled but agreed. Soon a dwarven sword was put in a stone statue's hand, and they did the same with every other unarmed statue. When the final weapon was in place, one of the stone guardians' eyes lit up. A beam of light linked all the statues, turning on the room's central mechanism. Then the dome started opening, and everyone watched as a bright light poured out from inside. Sutra kept his eyes glued to whatever was being revealed. Finally, the thunder-giving anvil appeared right in the middle of the room. When the relic showed up, Felicia said the records said there was one last step to activate it. Then she told Sutra and Karak to stay put, and the rest to spread out around the circle. The princess explained that everyone would pour mana into the disc clockwise, starting with her and building up the power. Each person then took a spot around the anvil. After telling everyone to focus, Felicia started the ritual, released her energy, and they all followed, making the relic glow brighter and brighter. During it, she told Sutra to push his mana harder, keep the rhythm, and stay focused. Both kept channeling energy into the anvil. The young man gave it his all to keep the flow going, focusing all his strength on the ritual. Then a column of energy shot out from the anvil and pierced the dungeon's ceiling. When the dust cleared, Sutra saw the result and suddenly was in an unknown place, surrounded by a crowd of dwarves. A demonic claw burst from cracked ground, and a chaotic battle between demons and dwarves erupted around him. As he tried to make sense of it, a booming voice told its followers to listen. He turned his head toward the mysterious presence. Dwarf warriors gathered around the demon prince while Sutra watched closely. Then, high above everyone, a massive winged creature appeared in the sky. The same voice told them to guard the sacred nest of the great Enkidu. Then the creature said it would become the gate's guardian. Its job would be to stay between the demon realm and the human realm. Back in reality, the young man woke up on the ground. Still shocked, he was breathing hard from what he'd just seen. Then he realized the vision could only have been of the black dragon Enkidu. Someone asked if he'd seen it too. As she walked through the room, Felicia talked about a huge black dragon that moved like molten lava. Kara said she'd seen the same beast, and Sutra wondered if everyone else had the same vision. The princess answered that it seemed that way, but she still wasn't sure what it meant. She turned toward the anvil. She said the only thing she knew was that using it would show the truth. Then she stepped up to the anvil. Her hand brushed the relic's surface, and blood ran down her fingers. A burst of dark energy shot out from the anvil and wrapped around her. The princess started getting swallowed by the power. She gritted her teeth and tried to fight it. Sutra saw what was happening and yelled her name. Then the demon prince stretched out his hand, begging her to stop. He grabbed Felicia's arm, and the dark energy took hold of him too. A massive burst of power exploded right in the middle of the room. From a distance, Karak and Caitlin called out Sutra's and Felicia's names. While the darkness was pulling him in, the young man let out a scream. They discovered that the earth dragon Enkidu's mana was testing anyone who tried to claim it without permission. The energy burst over the anvil, and a voice said that to conquer is to dominate. The two companions watched from a distance as the dark energy filled the room. When the blast died down, only an energy crystal was left on the floor. Soon after, Sutra knelt down holding the object, half of his face shrouded in darkness. His look had changed, and one eye glowed bright. The scene jumps to an orc camp in a canyon. From a cliff top, a lookout watched the movement below. He then lifted his binoculars to get a better look. While scanning the camp, he muttered if those fools really thought they wouldn't get spotted. Then he knelt before his leader and asked if they should strike right away. Yakuzan, chief of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, listened quietly. The commander told everyone to get ready for battle. He announced that they would wipe out any stragglers. In the orc camp, green-skinned warriors moved through the canyon. Suddenly, two of them glanced upward. A huge fireball fell from the sky onto the camp. The blast hit the center with massive force. Several orcs were hit directly by the impact. Then the Scarlet Lightning tribe's army showed up. The red-skinned warriors charged forward in a fierce attack. In the chaos, Chris Moonlight was surrounded by green-skinned orcs. He noticed that neither Caitlin nor Felicia were around to help. New explosions rattled the area, and Yakuzan watched from a distance. He mocked the demons for pushing forward without knowing the terrain. Soon after, he told his mages to finish off the rest and kill everyone. Then one mage's hand was seized by a strange aura. Confused, he wondered why his hand wouldn't obey. At the same time, a giant mammoth was wrapped in the same energy and its eyes glowed. It looked up, startled by what it saw. Suddenly, the mammoth turned on its own allies and attacked them furiously. From the cliff top, Yakuzan watched the chaos unfold among his troops. He wondered why his own forces were fighting each other. In the middle of the battlefield, Chris Moonlight also saw the rampaging mammoth. He stayed silent as the scene unfolded. Back in the dungeon, Sutra's hand clutched an object pulsing with energy. Surrounded by the aura, he wondered if the enemy had discovered the anvil. He knelt, gripping the object tightly. The dark energy formed into a hammer in his hand. Soon after, Sarah showed up to help Felicia and explained that the weapon was the thunder hammer, the anvil's counterpart. She said it looked like Enkidu had chosen him. Sutra glanced toward them. In front of everyone, Felicia, her face marked, told him to use the weapon. With the hammer in his hand, he watched the energy swirl around it. He said Enkidu's mana had shown him how to wield it. The dragon's voice echoed, saying that conquering and subjugating is how you dominate. He lifted the hammer, getting how to use the anvil that creates thunder. He announced he would start by dominating the swamp mammoth. Then he slammed the hammer into the ground, sending out a wave of energy. On the battlefield, the giant mammoth roared, its eyes glowing with the same power. Right away, all the mammoths turned on the Scarlet Lightning tribe and attacked. In the chaos, the red-skinned warriors wondered why they were suddenly under attack. In the confusion, one of the demon's allies moved against an enemy warrior. a red tribe chief stepped forward and cut down his foes. Seeing the mammoth attack the enemy, he decided the prince and princess had succeeded. The demon commander told his troops to kill everyone and let no opponent escape. They charged forward with fury. The Scarlet Lightning tribe's army was surrounded and hit from every side. From the cliff top, Yakuzan watched the chaotic battle below. His subordinate asked what was happening, and Yakuzan admitted he didn't know who controlled that mana. He suggested they retreat and wait for a new chance, which surprised the tribe chief. Then a cloud of dust exploded in front of them. Chris Moonlight landed in front of Yakuzan and his right hand. Facing the enemy chief, he said this looked like the end for him. Then he offered a quick death if he surrendered, which angered Yakuzan. He lifted his axe and vowed to tear him apart right then. Chris's eyes glowed bright. He moved forward using the Beast God Fist technique. His crushing strike hit Yakuzan and his subordinate together. Soon after, the Scarlet Lightning tribe's soldiers announced that their chief, Lord Yakuzan, was dead. As the enemies ran away, Chris stared at his bloodied hand and said they now just needed to finish off the stragglers. He thought they would have been in big trouble without those two. From the cliff top, the prince just hoped nothing had happened to them. Back in the dungeon, a projection showed the battle outside. Carrack asked if that was the mammoth's vision, and Felicia confirmed the anvil could control all the treasure guardians. The princess said that with that power, the Scarlet Lightning tribe would be. Before she could finish, her body gave out and she fainted, and Sarah caught her right away. Worried, Sarah asked if the princess was okay, and she replied she'd be fine after a short rest. As the group gathered around her, Carrack glanced to the side. Everyone then noticed that Sutra had vanished, leaving an empty hallway. Far away, Sutra celebrated finally getting a sigh of relief as several level-up notifications popped up for him. He immediately wondered if the sudden boost was caused by controlling something. Enkidu's relic. Soon after, a new notification told him his conquest skill level had risen. When he opened the skill screen, he saw that both conquest and under the king's banner had advanced. He didn't fully get it, but figured that boosting his main skill was a good sign. Then he noticed the newly earned King's Knights, which he guessed was a summoning skill. At that moment, a voice called his name, and he turned around right away. Caitlin was running toward him. The boy then remembered he had left without telling anyone. Before he could even apologize, the princess gave his head a hard punch. She scolded him for disappearing, and he just apologized. Soon after, she released him and said that now he was safe, they should head back, but they'd have to camp there. As they walked, Caitlin explained that the original plan had changed because a problem came up. Sutra quickly asked what the problem was. They then revealed that Felicia had lost consciousness and was still fast asleep. Caitlin said she must have overexerted herself after just being freed from the Scarlet Lightning tribe. She added that even though Felicia said she'd be fine, no one knew when she'd wake up. The princess said that without her, they couldn't summon the ghost horses and would have to watch over her for now. Sutra agreed, though he wondered if Felicia would really be okay. Night fell over the mountains. Inside the ruins, the group rested, spread out across the hall. The demon prince leaned against a pillar with his arms crossed. He then wondered if his stamina had fully recovered just from leveling up. Since he didn't feel tired, he thought maybe he should just wait until dawn. Suddenly, an idea hit him. Being in a ruin, there must be hidden weapons and treasure in the dungeon. He also figured the place would be full of traps and guardians. His eyes landed on the thunder hammer in his hands. Raising the weapon, he wondered what would happen if he ruled this place. He concluded that although the anvil's power only worked there, inside the ruin it became absolute power. With that, Sutra realized he had earned a free pass to the whole area. Meanwhile, Carrack was sleeping soundly on the hall floor. The young man walked over and woke the orc, who was still groggy. He invited the orc to come with him to another area. The two walked together through a torch-lit dark corridor. Carrack asked if it was safe, and Sutra reassured him, saying he ruled the place so there was nothing to fear. He opened a stone door and reminded Carrack that a ruin would surely hide good weapons inside. The orc stared carefully into the room and then warned about a huge monster lying on the floor. Facing the creature, the demon prince identified it as a griffin-shaped arc golem, a terrifying enemy. Carrack warned that they could have died if they entered without caution and suggested they retreat fast. Even though the orc trembled before the colossus, Sutra called him a coward. Then a huge stone door opened at the end of the corridor. When they passed through, Karak shouted with excitement that they had finally found the treasure. The orc lifted a piece of armor, and the prince agreed it looked top quality. Looking closer, he sensed a faint mana aura and confirmed it was magic armor. He offered it to Karak, who hesitated and asked if he could really keep it. The prince said yes, noting the armor was too big for him, and the orc thanked him eagerly. Soon after, some coins caught his eye on a nearby table. He grabbed one of the ancient gold coins and decided to stash all useful items in his inventory. He told Karak to gather everything valuable. Then a chest in the corner caught his eye. He walked over, opened it, and found it packed with coins. At that moment, a strange sound echoed through the area. Surprised, he turned to see what was happening. A wall slowly slid aside, revealing a hidden space. He said there was definitely something beyond. He moved toward the newly opened passage. After crossing a narrow corridor, a huge chamber opened up. Sutra stayed silent, taking in every detail of the new area. In the center, on a pedestal, floated an object wrapped in strange energy. He instantly recognized the mana coming from the relic. Even though he'd never seen it before, the name Enkidu popped into his mind. He quickly identified the item as the Gauntlet of Enkidu. At last, the relic finally showed its real name, Earthquaker. He just stood there in front of the pedestal, quiet, watching the floating relic. Then a voice echoed, calling him the Valiant. He heard the title Knight of Conquest and instantly realized the item was the Gauntlet of Enkidu. Knowing the relic was calling him, the demon prince stepped forward. When his hand brushed the gauntlet, a flood of alerts told him his level, mana, mental strength, and physical strength were too low. Even without fully getting it, he wondered if he still couldn't wield it. Then a new message flashed on his screen. Permission granted. Right after, another alert said the gauntlet accepted him as its master. A final notice confirmed that the Earthquaker would now belong to Sutra. In that instant, the gauntlet shot onto his arm and locked in place. A burst of energy erupted, filling the whole hall as the relic equipped itself. He just stared, amazed, as the energy surged through his body from the new gear. Looking at the gauntlet, he couldn't hide his shock at being recognized as its master. Then he saw his strength, mana and stamina stats jump dramatically. He wondered how that could happen just by equipping the item and thought about what would occur when he finally hit the right level. He was thrilled and said the gauntlet was simply amazing. The info screen clearly showed the name Gauntlet of Enkidu, and he realized the item was even better than he expected. Out of nowhere, Karak showed up behind him and asked what was going on. The orc said he had seen everything, even the moment the gauntlet materialized out of thin air. When the orc confirmed he'd witnessed it all, Sutra worried it would be a problem if his inventory got exposed. Karak thought it would only be a hassle if anyone else found out. He swore to keep the secret forever, even to his grave. Because of that promise, the prince asked if they should head back now that they had what they needed. Getting ready to leave, he said the place gave him a bad vibe. They both agreed it was smarter to go back for now. So the two left the hidden chamber and went back to the treasure room. Out of the blue, something on the far side of the room grabbed the prince's eye. He raised his hand to stop Karak and told him to hold up. The orc asked why, and Sutra just pointed the other way. He shouted excitedly that exactly what they needed was right there. Back in the main hall, he handed a potion to Felicia, and she downed it right away. The moment she drank it, a bright glow washed over her body and caught everyone's eye. Then she slowly opened her eyes. He held her and asked if she was awake, and the princess just whispered his name. With Caitlin's help, she sat up, still dazed, and asked what had happened. The 8th princess said Sutra had given her a mana recovery potion. Still puzzled, Felicia asked where he could find something so rare. He just pointed to the spot and reminded her where they were. She instantly recalled they were still inside the ruins. He gave a small smile and reminded her he ruled this place. Then he promised she could rest easy because her mana would be fully restored when she woke up. Felicia thanked him, and he looked surprised. She quickly thanked him again, sounding a bit embarrassed. The next morning, the sun rose over the canyon where the battle had ended. From the camp, General Bandel announced their return and said he'd believed the prince and princess would succeed from the start. During the celebration, Chris cleared his throat quietly to get Felicia and Sutra's attention. The seventh prince turned to the group, cleared his throat again, hesitated a beat, then spoke. He praised Felicia, saying her work had been impressive. The princess replied confidently that it was nothing. Sutra just watched the two talk. Then Chris told her to rest while they handled the cleanup, which surprised her. He added that the remaining Scarlet Thunder tribe members still needed to be dealt with, but everything would be settled in at most half a month. Hearing that, Sutra asked Caitlin if that meant they'd get a half-month vacation. The princess leaned in and whispered that there would be no vacation. He was left speechless. Finally, Caitlin said straight up that he still owed her something. Far from the camp, Sutra's new task started in a remote forest, and he took a solid punch to his stomach. The hit landed hard. Caitlin, standing in front of him, warned him to pull himself together or face the consequences. When he hit the ground, the princess ordered him to get up right away. Lying there, he thought beast fist training was brutal. He realized that Caitlin's task was exactly this training. The first 5 days were just getting hit over and over. After a week, he started to anticipate Caitlin's punches. On the 11th day of training, he could finally keep up with her moves and dodge her attacks. Caitlin said he was finally getting the hang of her lead. He replied that it was about time after all the beatings. Because of the intense training, his beast fist art and aura skills hit level 5. Caitlin announced that from now on he was ready to start the beast god fist art. She praised him, saying she'd never seen anyone learn that fast. Sutra focused, determined to master the secret lycanthrope technique. The princess took his hands and said she'd teach him a new way to use aura. Keeping a firm grip, Caitlin told him not to miss any detail and to follow closely. Sutra nodded and said he got it. Their clasped hands started to glow with intense energy, and an aura explosion burst around them. With his eyes closed, he felt Caitlin's aura. He sensed the energy guiding him in a familiar yet different way, letting him sense aura's depth more and more. He thought that when pushed to the limit, aura became the power of the soul and conquest. To him, conquering and forcing obedience felt like fierce, dominating power. Floating in the energy, Sutra wondered if this was the true aura. In the forest, the energy columns slowly faded. Notifications popped up saying his beast fist art and aura levels had gone up. Caitlin just said he was incredible. Another alert announced he'd earned beast god fist art level 1. He stared at the energy in his hand and thought about his new achievements. He clenched his fist and sent out a wave of power. The aura kept swirling around him and Caitlin in the clearing. A final alert told him his level had risen to 14. With a mysterious figure watching, Sutra said that from now on everything would truly start. The figure stayed silent, hidden behind a tree. The next morning the demon camp was fully restored. Inside a tent, Sutra and Caitlin sat at a table, and he asked if he could ask her about Felicia. Sutra wanted to know why things were tense between her and Chris. Thinking about needing Felicia as an ally, he figured that their strained relationship could cause trouble. Caitlin said they weren't exactly enemies, they just seemed distant. She said there had never been a direct incident between them. She suggested the tension might be linked to something between Chris and Sylvan. She scolded Sutra for mentioning Sylvan's name so casually, and he apologized right away. He recalled that Sylvan Doomblade, Felicia's twin brother, had been a tough opponent when he played as Zephyr. He started to picture what the real issue between Chris and Sylvan could be. Just then, Chris walked into the tent, surprising them both. Sutra asked what was going on and why Chris had arrived early. Chris said they should pack up, noting the issue was solved faster than expected and they'd leave in the afternoon. Hearing that, Sutra asked where they were headed. He said that with the matter settled, they'd need to report in, of course. He thanked the princes and princesses for their effort and dedication. He said he looked forward to the day they'd meet again. Sutra replied that he'd be waiting too. In front of the group, Chris asked if they should leave now. He announced they were heading to the Demon King's castle. The massive castle rose under a dark red sky. Inside a huge throne room, a lone figure sat on his throne. It turned out to be the Demon King himself, waiting there. The trip back to the Demon King's castle was simple. First, they had to reach a long-distance teleportation circle and then use transfer magic to go straight back. The ride to the nearest point would take 3 days, with no stops at inns. Sitting by the campfire, Sutra twirled a stick and admitted he was a little nervous about finally getting to the castle the next day. He thought about how power was split among three main factions: the second Prince Zephyr, the first Prince Bakel, and the fourth Princess Anastasia. In the fight for the throne, birth order didn't matter. Power came from who had more conquests and skill. Bakel and Zephyr, blood brothers, inherited the Draconian clan's power from their mother, giving them huge strength. He thought that if he had to pick an heir, the more moderate Bakel would be the best choice, but he quickly brushed it aside. He realized that choice no longer mattered, because after that day everything would change completely. Determined, he readied himself for what lay ahead. First, he needed to level up until he could fully wield the Earthquaker gauntlet. Then he planned to explore the new strength he'd gained, the King's Knights. Looking at the skill window, he was surprised to see it worked like a guild system, with bonuses, training, and even summoning. He covered his mouth, shocked at how insanely powerful that skill was. Smiling at the possibilities, Karak showed up and called his name. The orc scolded him for still being awake, reminding him they needed to rest to leave early in the morning. Sutra turned with a grin and said he'd arrived at the perfect moment, ignoring the guard's serious tone. With a sparkle in his eye, the prince invited him to try a small experiment. Karak looked nervous and asked what it was about. In the moonlight, Sutra summoned a glowing sword and called the powerful orc warrior. He placed the blade on Karak's shoulder and officially named him his knight. Blue energy wrapped around Karak's body, and he stared at himself in surprise. He said the feeling was strange and that his loyalty to the prince was growing. Sutra cheered, sure this was exactly the result he wanted. Karak, still confused, said it felt good to be flooded with strength, but he had no clue what just happened. Sutra put his hands on Karak's shoulders and asked if he didn't want to become the strongest orc in the world. He promised to turn him into an orc emperor as powerful as the dragon race, leaving the guard baffled and asking if the prince was okay. The scene shifted to an ancient, lonely tower standing in the middle of a forest. 3 days later, the group finally reached the Great Hall of the Teleportation Circle. Chris walked up to Sutra with a smile and asked if they should leave now. The prince agreed and got ready for the journey. They stepped onto the magic platform, which quickly began to glow brightly. The moment the magic activated, he tried to shout for them to wait, but it was already too late. Sutra was hurled uncontrollably through the flow of magical energy. He landed hard on the other side, completely disoriented. Caitlin came over and asked if he was okay. He said yes, though he still looked dazed. Then he noticed Felicia standing nearby. A group of women rushed to her, cheering her arrival. Felicia was surrounded by her attendants, all smiling and greeting her excitedly. Sutra watched and thought it looked like a celebrity fan club. At the same time, Chris and Caitlin's followers came over to greet them happily. Seeing that no one came for him, the prince heard 2 of Felicia's servants whispering. Looking at the separate groups, he finally got his place in the Demon King's castle. He kept a confident smile, sure everything was going exactly as he planned. He turned to the guard and asked if he was ready for what was coming. With determination, he said that from now on they would start changing things, one step at a time. Sutra's tower inside the massive castle was completely abandoned and forgotten. His quarters were dusty, full of old crates and covered in spiderwebs. Karak said they could unpack right there, and the prince replied that at least they had a room to stay in. Leaning on the orc, he said they'd have free time until the official event the next day, but it felt like they'd been left to rot. Knocking on the door made him turn around, surprised. A woman in a formal uniform introduced herself as Flora from the Demon King's Castle Property Management Office. Sutra asked why she was visiting an abandoned place, and she said it was because his public merit level had risen. She announced he was now eligible to choose a new residence, which left him completely shocked. Soon after, he met Isabella, the head of the Public Merit Office. He asked if he was in the right place to get a new home, and she smiled and confirmed. Isabella then activated a magic panel that showed the prince's updated status. Because of his latest conquest, his merit level rose to 5, giving him access to more facilities and a higher monthly payment. She told him he was the first prince to achieve so much on his first mission, which left him speechless for a moment. Sutra quickly asked to see the available residences, and Isabella agreed to show them. In the background, Karak looked shocked, stumbling over the prince's name. Standing before a luxurious mansion with golden gates, the orc asked if that was really his new residence. Inside, Flora greeted them, noting they had arrived earlier than expected, which confused them both. Wearing a maid uniform, she bowed and said it would be an honor to serve them from that day forward. Karak whispered, curious about the sudden job change, and Sutra explained he had hired her with his merit points. He brushed off more explanations, while the orc muttered that the prince had been saying nonsense lately. The next day the scene moved to another wing of the castle. In a hall, Karak, dressed formally, admitted he was so nervous he felt like going to the bathroom, and Sutra told him to go right away. Holding a glass, the prince complained that his guard's nervousness was rubbing off on him. Sutra turned and praised Caitlin and Felicia, saying they both looked incredible in their dresses. Felicia smiled and said who else could have picked the outfits, and Caitlin praised her choice. Feeling satisfied, Felicia said all the effort had been worth it. Caitlin smiled at Sutra, saying he looked great and the suit fit him perfectly. A little embarrassed, the prince thanked her and returned the compliment, saying they both looked spectacular. Caitlin seemed happy with the comment, while Felicia just nodded with a hint of superiority. Chris walked up from behind, put a hand on Sutra's shoulder, and asked if this was his first audience ceremony. He smiled, pointed at him, and said today was his big debut, urging him to show himself to everyone in the castle. Sutra smiled back, nodding with confidence. When the massive doors opened, he thought some might call his achievements just luck. He knew soon every eye in the great hall would be on him. The group marched toward the throne with serious, determined looks. Sutra was sure everyone there would finally notice the prince they once dismissed as useless. As they approached the throne, Chris was the first to kneel and introduce himself, formally announcing his presence to the great ruler of the demon realm. Sitting on his imposing throne, Demon King Mitra watched the group in silence. An official beside him announced the start of the report on the prince's and princess's achievements. Sutra stared at his father's figure, and with a slight tremor, realized he had forgotten an important detail. The king is the only person in that castle who must never be underestimated. Man, right then, a huge pressure slammed into him and his eyes popped wide. Just the king being there made him drop to his knees, like his whole body might break any second. Then a voice popped up in his head, telling him to win. He remembered hearing that he's a king too. The Demon King locked eyes with him, glowing bright, and the voice told him to beat that stare. Kshatra grimaced, pushing through the pressure with his own will. A golden glow burst out of him, shoving the darkness away. His eyes lit up, and he got that this is real conquering power. The Demon King looked a bit surprised. From his throne, the ruler shouted his name. Felicia, Chris, and Caitlin all stared, totally blown away by his resistance. Kshatra lifted his head, still on his knees, and stared his dad straight in the eye. The Demon King then said he was excited for his future conquests. The nobles were confused because the king had never called a prince or princess by name in an audience before. Chris asked why the 9th prince, who barely shows up, was being mentioned. It's a usual line, but nobody had ever heard the Demon King say it, so it felt priceless. Kshatra swore he'd do everything he could to live up to His Majesty's expectations. Outside, someone yelled for the prince to get up fast. His servant walked in and said a letter from the Office of Public Merits just showed up. The young guy grabbed the letter and wondered why that office would send it. He opened the letter. The servant told him to read it out loud, but Kshatra wasn't sure how to feel about that. Inside, he learned that the Demon King, his dad, had given him a personal mission. The crew met in a hall. Chris read the letter and said it was a monster killing quest to subdue the Cassius horde, and Felicia added that it would take him to the Anger Plains. Kshatra confirmed that was the destination, noting Chris had trained there because the subjugation happens every year. Felicia said she'd go with him if she could, but their schedules were different, so Chris said Kshatra would be on his own. Then Chris turned to Kshatra. He warned him that from now on people would start noticing him, some trying to get close while others stayed wary, so he'd have a lot on his plate. Kshatra said he got it, remembering that even Zephyr never got called by name in an audience. Chris said he'd help anytime, and the prince thanked him. Before they left, Chris told him to find Felicia, who had something for him. Felicia then said he'd need strong legs to get through Centaur land. She handed the mounts over to Kshatra, and he thanked her. Felicia gave him another thing, and the young guy asked what else she had. She showed him a necklace and said it was the tear of a dark elf. Kshatriya realized it was a holy relic that usually only someone could get by killing Felicia herself. The elf explained that dark elves are proud and never forget a kindness or a grudge. Then she gave him a hug and told him to stay safe and come back. He began to answer, but Felicia suddenly pushed him away. She stepped back and said it was nothing. Kshatriya said his goodbyes, telling her to stay healthy until he came back. The group left, and Felicia just said okay. They arrived with a big splash on the Anger Plains. Kshatriya and his crew touched down at the spot. The servant asked if they'd arrived, and the prince said they had. A woman greeted them, calling him the 9th prince. She said her name was Karma and that she was the ranger sent to guide them. Kshatriya introduced himself and said it was great to meet her. Karma said the honor was all hers. He then suggested they head out right away. Karma told them it would take 2 days to get to the centaur settlement with only a few stops, and Kshatriya agreed. The prince asked if any other soldiers were coming, but she said the mission popped up suddenly, so it was just the 2 of them for now. She reassured him that the centaurs would be on their side, so they wouldn't be outnumbered. The real issue then was weapons, and a spear might be best for a mounted fight. While traveling, the group stopped when they heard a noise. Karma wondered what it was and told them to wait while she went to check. The ranger ran off to investigate. She realized it was the Cassius horde and wondered how they'd already found them. The creatures moved forward. A centaur fled from the danger. A creature chased it closely. The centaur looked back, scared. Just before it got caught, it was saved in the nick of time. The centaur turned and saw Kshatriya on his mount. The prince faced the creatures and joked that the welcome committee showed up early. He said it didn't matter as he formed a gauntlet on his hand. Riding his beast, he said he was ready for a fight. He challenged the creatures while the centaur asked who he was. The lead creature charged. It leapt at the prince, trying to crush him. Kshatriya called it the boss. Karma and his servant ran toward him, warning him not to go alone. He said he was fine and told them just to watch. He then decided to try a new technique and shifted his stance. He was practicing the beast god fist art. The creature charged with its mouth wide open. The young man got his fist ready for the strike. Then he let loose the explosive fist. Karma and the servant watched. The blow hit the creature right in the head. He stopped over the fallen body and stared at the result. The other creatures in the pack ran away. The centaur faced the fallen creature and asked what that was about. Kshatriya looked at his hand and said the hit was way more destructive than he thought. He added it was almost Caitlyn-level power. The servant and Karma praised him for taking down the creature in one blow, and the centaur thanked him for saving them. A scout introduced himself as Swift Wind, saying he was sent to escort them and would guide them to the centaur settlement. They left the creature's body behind. The group finally reached the centaur settlement on the Anger Plains. 4 centaur tribes lived on the plains. The fierce wind, heavy rain, raging flame, and restless night. A man greeted the group, saying they must have had a tough trek, and explained that the Raging Flame tribe was the strongest. He introduced himself as Savage Eyes and said he was the great chief of the centaurs. Everyone recognized the name. This meeting was bound to happen, but as an enemy, not an ally. The servant noted the chief's deadly stare, but Kshatriya reminded him he was the 9th prince. Savage Eyes watched him. The prince asked for the chief's take on the situation. The centaur chief pointed to a map and said, frankly, things weren't good. He explained that the Cassius horde, which should be up north now, had moved south much earlier than usual. Savage Eyes added that his scouts were watching the area, thinking part of the horde might be lost. He said that in 3 days, warriors from all 4 tribes would gather to crush the beasts. Kshatriya said he understood and would wait, asking if there was anything else. The chief then called out to the 9th prince. He asked if it was true that the young man had smashed Acacius's skull with one punch. The prince said yes, it was true, and offered to show him later. Savage Eyes watched him for a moment, then said he looked forward to it. That night, centaurs from the settlement gathered around. They recognized the 9th prince as the one who had crushed Acacius's skull in a single blow. The servant said he was pretty popular, and Kshatriya agreed. He blamed the fame on his natural charm and virtue, then realized maybe he shouldn't have said that. The servant suggested His Highness get some rest. The prince went to bed and fell asleep. He slept soundly. He suddenly woke up and saw the gauntlet on his arm and wondered how it got there. A voice called him by name, Ninth Prince Kshatriya Ignas. He looked at the figure in front of him. The floating woman said she needed his help. The young man asked who she was. She revealed she was the fragment of the Watcher ankle and called herself Green Wind. Green Wind was one of the nature spirits the centaurs and satyrs worshipped. Thanks to Green Wind's power, the plains of Fury stayed green. She then moved him to a lush landscape. The woman said that place was her home. That was where the fragment of the Watcher ankle, her origin, lived. Kshatriya repeated the name and asked for a moment to take it in. Kshatriya realized the Watcher ankle was one of the 6 elder dragons and felt the weight of that revelation. Elder dragons were divine beings that players could never meet in Night Saga. He thought about the coincidence of having gotten Enkidu's power and now meeting the Watcher ankle. Ankle said there was no time because monsters from the north were heading for her home. Their goal was to steal the green from the plains, destroy her home, and devour her soul. She claimed he could protect the place, but the prince said his level was still too low. The woman asked if he hadn't already gained Enkidu's power. She reassured him not to worry, saying Ankle's fragment would make him even stronger. Ankle told him to first show that symbol to her children, then the prince went back to his room. When he woke up, Kshatriya found an object in his hand. Ankle's voice told him they would surely lend him their strength. Outside, the prince wondered what it all meant. Kshatriya warned Savage Eyes that Lord Green Wind was in danger and that the Cassius horde would attack a small temple to the northeast. The prince urged them to gather their men and leave right away, but the chief hesitated to march just on his word. Savage Eyes then saw the object in the young man's hand. Kshatriya showed him the sacred relic of Lord Green Wind. Convinced, the centaur chief asked what needed to be done. The centaur army then prepared for battle. Kshatriya rode alongside the warriors. Using a map to guide them, he announced he could already see the spot. Ahead of them was the Temple of Green Wind. A scout pointed the way for the chief, saying he never would have found it without the map. They looked at the field ahead. A massive horde from the Cassius tribe already surrounded the temple. Kshatriya realized something was definitely up that he didn't know about. The centaur chief said the enemy numbers were higher than he expected and asked if the prince had a plan. Kshatriya remembered Green Wind telling him to draw power from Ankle's fragment and guessed there must be something inside the temple. He told them he was going to the temple and asked them not to let the enemies get close, and Savage Eyes agreed. The prince called Karak and Karma to go with him, and they agreed. Savage Eyes ordered his warriors not to let any enemy enter the temple. He commanded all units to get ready for battle. The centaur army charged forward. Archers readied their bows and took aim. Arrows struck the horde of creatures. Centaur warriors moved forward against the enemies. One of them slashed 2 creatures with his sword. As the battle raged, Kshatriya and his group rode toward the temple. Karak asked if they just needed to get him to the temple, and the prince confirmed. The servant declared they would clear a path for the prince no matter what. Karak charged forward with his weapon, attacking the creatures. He cleared a path through the enemies with a single blow. Karma also fought, taking on 2 beasts at once. Kshatriya noted that his team was doing great. As they advanced, he realized they were almost at the temple. Suddenly, a giant club came down toward him. A massive beast comes at him hard, slamming into his horse and sending him flying. The creature then stands up right in front of him. The beast moves toward him. Kshatriya gets to his feet and admits he dropped his guard. Karak steps in and blocks the next swing with his weapon. The servant checks if the prince is okay and tells him to stand up, saying it's too early to be sleeping. The huge monster charges at him, and its weapon crashes hard against Karak's shield. He fights to hold back the beast's massive power. Kshatriya jokes, asking if he's finished after that awesome display. Under the king's banner, the prince sends power down to his ally. He says the real fight starts now, and Karak pushes back the monster with fresh strength. The foe looks totally shocked by the shift, and Karak fires back with a strong strike. He yells Karara as the orc keeps pounding the beast, ending with a massive downward swing. With one last hit, Karak cracks the ground beneath him. The orc tells the prince to move forward, and Kshatriya says he's counting on him. He sprints toward a huge ancient temple and bursts through the big front doors into the main hall. A voice pushes him forward, and he knows it's the Green Winds. Ankitu's gear appears on his arm, guiding him. A glow from his hand points deeper into the temple. A path of leaves leads him through the dark hallways to a massive tree in the middle of the building. Leaves drift down as he looks at the huge tree. A branch reaches out, holding an object, and Kshatriya fixes his eyes on the artifact. He sees it's a dragon heart and wonders if it's a piece of ankle. Ankle materializes and tells him the Plains of Fury have stayed peaceful for ages thanks to her magic as the observer. She says the temple is the heart of her power, and if it's destroyed the peace will end. She asks Kshatriya to awaken the ancient magic left in the temple to stop the threat. Outside, Savage Eyes tells his troops to hold the line and block the enemy's entry. Meanwhile, Karak keeps battling the beasts in his way. Karma fights bravely against several foes. Ankle says she's counting on the 9th prince and asks him to use the magic she left to guard the Plains of Fury and its children. Kshatriya puts his hand on the dragon heart, and a huge surge of power rushes through him. He feels the sudden burst of energy. The young man stands before a massive dragon under a starry sky, recognizing it as Ankle the Observer. She tells him to accept the power she offers. Kshatriya becomes filled with the ancient magic, and a huge pillar of power shoots up from the temple's top. During the fight, Karak is surrounded by foes. He glances at the temple and shouts for the prince. Giant roots burst from the ground, trapping Savage Eyes and his soldiers. The allies watch huge roots sprout around the temple. The earth cracks and more roots spread, and 3 massive wooden golems rise from the ground. A pack of beasts readies to strike. The golems move forward and clash with them, and one golem crushes a creature with its strong arm. The forest guardians keep battling the enemies. Ankle declares it's finished, saying her ancient magic has awakened, and she thanks the 9th prince sincerely. Kshatriya keeps his hand on the dragon heart and starts pulling in its energy. Ankle steps back, surprised, and asks what's going on. She wonders why her magic is pouring into him as he keeps absorbing it. She asks if he's trying to take her power right now. Kshatriya's body reacts to the massive flow of power. She moves close and tells him to stop, saying his body can't handle it. A sparkle appears in his eyes as a level-up notification pops up. The wounds on his face start to fade. Ankle watches, surprised, as his injuries heal. More level-up alerts show up while he keeps absorbing the power, and a mysterious voice tells him to conquer. The voice keeps urging him to subjugate and make everyone kneel, even the remains of an ancient dragon. A hand curls into a tight fist, and a figure says it will bow to him. The dragon heart fuses into Kshatriya's chest, and a burst of energy erupts from the great tree. The tree settles down and the hall goes quiet. Kshatriya stands, breathing hard, as the leftover energy fades. A voice names him the Knight of Conquest, and a notification shows he earned a new passive skill. He gets a dragon body alert, and new notifications tell him he now has dragon blood and poison immunity. A status screen shows his updated stats, including the Dragonborn class, which confuses him. The description says a Dragonborn is someone who has awakened the dragon. He can now use the dragon gene's magic. Zephyr's hidden inheritance let him awaken the dragon gene even though he's a hybrid. Ankle says he truly has the spirit and body of a dragon, and she feels the observer's power inside him. She adds she isn't disappointed, because this power was sealed for 1,000 years and no one could use it. She names him the successor to Ankle the Observer and says she has only one wish. She asks if he can protect the Ingle Plains and its children, and he nods, saying, yes, of course. Outside, the golems keep fighting the beasts, but the golems start getting overwhelmed and destroyed. The beasts push forward against the weakened wooden guardians. Kshatriya watches the fight from above and spots who's commanding the Cassius. He jumps off the parapet onto the battlefield, lands among the enemies, and tells Karak he has something to do. Meanwhile, the giant beast keeps tearing down the wooden golems. The monster lets out a huge roar, then its eyes lock onto a new target. Kshatriya rushes forward and slams a punch into the monster's chest. He jumps back to dodge a counter, noting how surprisingly quick the creature is. The beast's attack whizzes past, barely missing and clearing a spot on the ground. He then dares the monster to block his next hit. He meets its fist with his exploding fist, his hand wrapped in a stone gauntlet. The impact pushes him back, making him wonder how thick the monster's hide is. The beast swings a crushing blow at where he stood. Kshatriya dodges, realizing his first attack didn't work because the enemy is tougher than expected. He then gets ready to try something new. Kshatriya calls on dragon blood, unlocking a special dragonborn skill. His weapon, the shaker, unleashes part of its true power. He says he's betting everything on this one strike. The monster rushes at him while he readies his move. Then Kshatriya says it's Karak's turn. He orders the king's knights, and Karak suddenly shows up behind the beast. The orc lands a heavy blow on the back of the monster's head. The huge creature reels from the surprise. Kshatriya warns it to brace for what's coming next. The monster fixes its gaze on him. The prince says this time will be totally different from before. He gets ready to use the shaker's secret technique, launching a massive attack at his foe. Savage Eyes and his troops watch as Kshatriya's strike hits the giant beast dead on. The centaur chief keeps a determined stare, and Karak watches the outcome. The monster's body shatters into pieces in front of Kshatriya, and a level-up notification pops up. The screen tells him he defeated the boss Drake Ogre Mustafa and gives him the title Drake Ogre Slayer. Kshatriya wonders how much power he used, saying he would have passed out if he hadn't leveled up. He says that wasn't the shaker's real ultimate move, there's something even bigger. Karak rushes to tell the prince that some enemies are fleeing now that their leader fell. Savage Eyes charges, spinning to hit the remaining creatures, and orders his men to chase them because they'll fight again if they get away. The centaur chief shouts to let none escape and to kill them all. The night settles and the battlefield in front of the temple is scattered with fallen foes. The winners gather around a bonfire, and Karak and Karma raise their drinks in a toast. Ankle walks up to Kshatriya, noticing he seems to be enjoying himself, and asks why he's here. He says he came to ask Greenwind some questions, and she says she'll answer anything he wants, but first she wants him to free her from his control, which confuses him. She explains that because he absorbed Ankle's mana, she is now bound to him, and he agrees to sort it out. They sit in silence for a moment, then Kshatriya admits with an awkward smile that he doesn't know how to release her. Ankle questions him about what he just asked, calls him a temporary master, and asks why he acted like he knew, and he replies he was never taught. Kshatriya asks her to calm down so they can think, and asks about her current state. She says she belongs to him, so she obeys. He asks again if she feels uneasy or if anything has changed, but she says no. Ankle adds that if she vanishes, the Ingle Plains will lose their life. He thinks about it for a moment. Kshatriya suggests she stay in the Ingle Plains instead of coming with him, saying she doesn't need to follow. She looks surprised and asks if he's abandoning her. Kshatriya says no and asks if she wants to go with him, but Ankle says it's natural to follow since he's her master. He then realizes he has unintentionally created a spiritual contract. The prince asks if she is the embodiment of the spell over the plains, and she nods. He then asks if she can create something to replace herself. She says it will take time, but it's possible, and Kshatriya says she can join him once it's ready. Ankle warns that to do that she'll have to give up most of her power. He smiles, saying that's fine, because making a contract with a high-ranking spirit like her is already a great chance. She calls him master, and Kshatriya says that now he can ask his questions. The prince then asks how and when Ankle died, which catches her off guard. She explains she's only a fragment and lacks most of Ankle's memories, but she knows that 1,000 years ago Ankle was killed. She can't remember who did it, but she's sure it wasn't another ancient dragon. Kshatriya is stunned, wondering who could kill an ancient dragon with divine power. Ankle asks him to talk to her casually because the formal tone makes her uneasy. Kshatriya then asks if, as her successor, he can also hold the power of another ancient dragon. She says it's normally impossible, but it might work for him. Ankle explains he already has the opposing powers of Ankle and Enkidu, and if he can balance them, he could wield other dragons' power. Surprised by this, he decides to ask one final question. Kshatriya asks if she knows anything about the power he holds. She repeats that she doesn't have all of Ankle's memories. Then Ankle says her understanding of his power is incomplete. A bright light starts shining from her, and he wonders what's happening. She talks about the night of conquest, saying it was born under a king's destiny. A voice says he's gonna conquer and rule everything because that's the king's power. Then Ankle adds that this power will belong to him. A brand new day starts. Then Kshatriya falls from a high cliff into the forest. He lands on the ground, totally confused. The last thing he remembers is chatting with the green wind. Ankle shows up and asks if her master is waking up. She says her own consciousness, which stayed inside him, came back last night and knocked him out. In a vision, a figure leans over the sleeping young prince and talks about the night of conquest, born under a king's destiny to rule everything. It then says that this power is now his. Kshatriya gets that Ankle already knew about his king and knight of conquest abilities. She tells him he's her master forever and that she has something she didn't mention yesterday. Out of nowhere, a map appears around him. Ankle tells him that one of her relics lies far up north in the Ankle Plains. She says it's the Shield of Life, a relic powered by an ancient dragon. She explains that more than 1,000 years ago, she gave the shield to the bravest centaur warrior, who won endless battles without ever getting hurt. But he wasn't truly untouchable. He was slain in his own bed by a woman sent by someone who wanted the shield. Because only the owner could use the Shield of Life, his followers buried it with him in his northern tomb. Over the centuries, the shield turned into a legend, and the centaurs started calling it after the warrior himself. Ankle then reveals the shield's new name is White Surrey. Kshatriya recognizes that name from the Knight's saga and realizes even seasoned players never found the ultimate shield. Ankle asks if her master knows about it. Smiling, the young prince asks where the tomb is, and she says it's way up north in the Angel Plains. But Ankle adds that she first has to make a copy of herself, and she'll start as soon as they finish talking. He asks how long that will take, and she says about 2 days. Kshatriya then says they'll leave in 2 days because the trek isn't impossible. He's set on going, since getting the White Surrey will make everything easier. To head north, the prince plans to claim he's hunting the last members of the Cassius group. The snag is that the protection spell in the temple has probably already been spotted by the Demon King's castle. If a report goes out today, an expert will show up within a week to check the ruins. Just as Kshatriya thinks it's smarter to leave before they arrive, Savage Eyes tells him someone from the Demon King's castle is already here, and the prince can't believe they're that quick. A few moments later, he walks into the main hall. When she sees him, Felicia turns and asks what's up with his face. She adds that he looks like he's seen a ghost. Kshatriya, surprised, asks Felicia why she's here. Karak jumps in, saying they should at least say hello first. A young elf comes forward, bows, and says it's an honor to meet the 9th prince. She then introduces herself as Daphne, daughter of Echo, the 5th concubine. He instantly knows she's Daphne, the druid born from a dryad. She's one of the 3 half-siblings he has to protect no matter what. Felicia says she's an amazing druid and will be handy, and Daphne says it's great to work with them. Kshatriya decides he needs to make a good impression on her. He then asks Felicia about her trip to the Jishka Mountains, but she says he wrapped up the mission way too fast. She steps up and warns him that he's attracting too much attention. Karak adds that while taking down Cassius wasn't hard, finishing it in 2 days instead of the usual 2 weeks flips the whole situation. Felicia explains that because a lot of weird stuff happened, everyone was shocked and someone else would have come to question him. Kshatriya asks if that's why she showed up instead of someone else. She admits it wasn't just that, but also because she's curious about the temple's magic and why the Cassius are acting differently. The young prince just thanks her for caring about him. Then Felicia asks what his plan is now. He says he'll head north to check if any Cassius members are still around and to find the White Surrey. Savage Eyes replies he'll go with him because it's his duty as the tribe's chief. Kshatriya says that makes sense, and Felicia also says she'll go. She argues it's better to study a living Cassius than a dead one. The prince accepts their help, even though the hunt was just an excuse. Karak watches, feeling things are about to get messy. Meanwhile, a huge monster moves forward. Karak and his crew get ready for battle. The orc says he knew this was coming. He shouts that his gut feeling was right as the fight starts. The warriors charge forward, meeting the creatures in fierce combat. Out of nowhere, a monster jumps at Kshatriya from behind. He spins around and attacks it, asking where they all just came from. The prince wonders if they didn't wipe them out last time, because new winged foes are now on the field. Flying creatures rush toward the group. Kshatriya calls them geists and says they're a real pain. He then says they're not the only ones who can fly. Using the wind's blessing, the young prince starts to levitate. Ankle shows up, surprised, and asks how he's using her magic. He darts toward the flying monsters. One of them gapes at him, shocked by his aerial strike. With one punch, he slams the monster mid-air. The hit sends the creature soaring far into the horizon. The prince then tells them to stop getting in his way and just disappear. Little Ankle just watches silently. Deep in the forest, Daphne walks by herself. She suddenly freezes, feeling like she's being watched. A winged monster attacks her from behind, but Karak grabs her and pulls her to safety. He tosses her aside as the monster rushes at him. Felicia gets ready to strike, saying the timing is perfect. She unleashes her power on the creatures, noting she was already planning to hunt them. Her ability hits the battlefield hard. Soon all the monsters are down, and the group gathers. Felicia asks Kshatriya to check the creatures' bodies. She points out that it was probably some curse magic. The elf explains that even though the monsters got stronger, their life force was drained and their emotions seemed cut off. She concludes that someone was pulling the strings. Kshatriya is confused because they'd already beaten the manipulator earlier. Karak then interrupts, drawing attention to Daphne. He notes that the girl stayed tense the whole fight, probably because it was her first real battle. Kshatriya sees that Daphne looks far less seasoned than the one he knew. She feels the spirit's fear and says the dark power gets stronger the farther north they travel. Ankle also senses an energy from the north and suggests an entity might be the source. Savage Eyes thinks they'll learn more by going to the far north, and Kshatriya suggests checking the observation tower. Even though he only wanted the white Suri, he agrees since things got messy. The group decides to head to the tower for now. At dusk, they finally arrive at the observation tower. At the top, everyone scans the horizon in that direction. Felicia points to a huge cluster of creatures, guessing there are 200 to 300 of them. She says only a high-ranking undead, at least a lick, could gather that many. Suddenly, Daphne collapses to the ground. Karak helps her up and asks if she's okay, and she nods. Felicia explains that because she's half-spirit, the dark energy hits her hard. Karak suggests they should retreat for now since they don't have enough forces. Then Felicia turns, surprised, and announces that someone is heading their way. Kshatriya pulls up a map, wondering who's coming. On the map, he sees his allies surrounded by enemies. Karak then tells him to look at the sky, pointing out that something is flying toward them. The prince watches projectiles rush in fast. He shouts that it's a trap and orders everyone out of the tower. Several explosions then blow the tower to pieces. Karak reacts amid the chaos. The tower's rubble falls while the undead horde watches from afar. In the chaos, Felicia readies a spell. She uses her wind control to shield everyone from the falling debris. The wreckage lands safely around the group. Felicia walks up to Kshatriya and asks if he's okay. Savage Eyes thanks the sixth princess, but she says it's not time for thanks yet. The elf points at the enemy horde and says they need to get out. Kshatriya notes they already look surrounded, but Felicia asks for a moment. She says she'll find a way to clear a path. The young prince watches Felicia focus. He draws his dagger and says he'll hold them off as long as he can. Kshatriya lifts his dagger and triggers an ability for his allies. Savage Eyes feels a sudden surge of strength flow through his whole body. Ankle asks if her master really plans to fight, and he confirms it. The prince then says that, for now, they can only trust Felicia. A gauntlet appears on his hand. He orders everyone to get ready for battle. The group lines up, facing the incoming undead horde. Kshatriya says they won't be forced to retreat. Karak rushes forward, slashing at the enemies with his weapon. Savage Eyes also jumps in, cutting down the skeletons ahead of him. Felicia then blasts her power, vaporizing several enemies at once. The undead remains scattered on the ground, but a single skull hovers in the air. The young prince watches, breathing hard. The skeletons start rebuilding themselves, and he sees that at this pace, it'll never end. A wave of skeletons moves toward the prince and his allies. He says they have to locate the leader controlling the monsters fast if they want any hope. Suddenly, a rain of projectiles falls from the sky onto the battlefield. The attack hits both allies and undead alike. One of the centaurs gets caught off guard by the sudden strike. The barrage keeps coming, hitting everyone on the field. One of the orcs falls, defeated amid the chaos. Among the fallen, an imposing armored figure rises. A skeletal knight stands over the wreckage. Kshatriya finally sees him and calls him the leader. Savage Eyes leaps onto the knight, swinging his sword. He braces for impact as he charges, but the knight blocks and throws him back with a counter. Karak seizes the chance and charges the leader. His attack is also blocked by the skeletal knight, and Karak gets pushed back by the force. The skeletal knight counters with a sword swing, sending the orc flying into the rubble. Kshatriya appears in the air, thanking the enemy for coming straight at him. With his gauntlet active, he moves forward and says this ends now. His fist lands squarely on the knight's chest. The young prince reels back in surprise at the hit. The knight grabs him and throws him to the ground. Falling, Kshatriya wonders how strong this opponent is. He admits the enemy is too powerful for them. Felicia steps up and tells Kshatriya that's enough and he can rest now. The skeletal knight watches the newcomer, and Kshatriya glances at the elf, looking surprised by her jump-in. Wrapped in her magic, she says the fight is hers from now on. Then Felicia challenges the skeleton to a duel, floating up in the air and casting a spell. An explosion slams into the skeletal knight's head. He reels from the hit, then leaps at her for a counter, but Felicia uses her wind control to freeze him midair. The magic pushes the knight back. She disappears in a flash and pops back above the knight, who looks up surprised. Felicia lands a fresh strike right on his head, knocking him back while Kshatriya watches from below. The young prince sees Felicia single-handedly crush the monster. All of a sudden his eyes drift to the side. Daphne steps up and asks if His Highness is okay. She unleashes her power, wrapping all allies on the battlefield in magic. Savage Eyes and Karak get caught in the spell. Karak feels a new sensation in his body. Kshatriya spots the Dryad's area of effect buff and says Daphne is finally helping. Then a Boost Levite 1 notification pops up next to him. The young prince looks surprised as strange orbs surround him. He gets fully wrapped in a new energy and gains the Spiritual Awakening Levite 1 ability. Power surges through his whole body, boosting all his skills. He notices the spirits of life and wind now share his body. Meanwhile, Felicia keeps hammering the knight, and the fight leaves her out of breath. The knight swings, but she vanishes to dodge it and readies a fresh attack in her hands. The elf glares at him, calling him a stubborn bastard, and fires her final strike, telling him to just die. Something unexpected hits, and she looks shocked. Powered up, Karak charges forward with a battle cry. He steps in and blocks the knight's attack aimed at Felicia. The skeletal knight turns, surprised by the help. Kshatriya and Karma float up, and the prince praises Felicia for a job well done. The elf looks at him when she hears his voice. He then says the final blow is his. The prince lands an explosive punch on the knight's head. The hit throws the creature back and throws it off balance. Karak cheers that they can win, but Kshatriya claims his fist did the work. The orc moves to chop off the enemy's head himself, then suddenly freezes. The knight counters and sends Karak flying. Kshatriya yells his ally's name. The prince gets hit by the shockwave. He watches the scene, a mark appearing on his face. Felicia looks at the battlefield, confused by her allies suddenly falling, and stares in disbelief. A towering skeletal knight looms over Kshatriya, and Felicia yells his name. In the distance, the forest stays silent under the night sky. Ainkal darts through the trees, then stops abruptly when she spots her target. The tiny creature finally discovers the warrior's tomb on a floating island, where the sword marking the final resting place lies. Strange pillars rise from a ruined land beneath a star-filled sky. Felicia hovers in the chaos, wondering what's going on. She then refuses to accept reality. She screams Kshatriya's name as he lies fallen before a massive armored figure. The giant knight readies an attack, its skeletal face turning toward the young man. Felicia warns him not to look away while she's his opponent. She says his enemy is her, then launches a triple strike at the knight, hitting him straight in the chest. But other projectiles block her attack, and the knight suddenly appears right in front of Felicia. He darts in a blink and slams her with a powerful downward strike, hitting her squarely. Felicia calls him a bastard, and the giant knight punches the ground hard. His punch shatters the ground around him, and a horde of monsters surrounds Felicia. Kshatriya stays fallen in the distance. A voice tells its master to get up, saying there's no time to stay down. Kshatriya stands in an unknown place. Ainkal shows up and urges him to awaken his power, the green wind. He asks what she means and how he could awaken such a power. Something appears above him, and he looks up. She tells him to remember because he already knows the answer. Back on the battlefield, Kshatriya shouts dragon blood, then something falls from the sky toward the ground. The creatures around Felicia look up, and she lifts her gaze. Ainkal appears and attacks the monsters. Ainkal's attack sweeps across the battlefield, ending in a huge explosion that hits the creatures. Kshatriya props himself up and wonders what just happened. A shield named White Suri appears before him. He asks how Green Wind did that, and the creature says she found the tomb where the shield rested. Green Wind admits it was reckless, but she got White Suri to recognize a new master. The young man looks at the creature, which tells him to accept praise later and focus on the foe in front of them. Back in reality, Kshatriya gets knocked back by a blow from the knight. The armored figure suddenly loses balance and gets knocked aside. The young man rushes his opponent, telling him to wait. The knight readies a focused attack in its mouth. Kshatriya is shocked by how fast the attack is about to fire. The blow finally launches toward him. Felicia yells Kshatriya's name as the headless knight stays standing. The giant knight's head regenerates and Kshatriya charges at it. The young man lifts his shield for protection. He wonders about the energy he feels, and Green Wind explains that Ainkal's fragment turned his body into a dragonborn. The creature adds that a new power now flows through him and asks if he can feel it. Ainkal's magic, kept for years inside White Suri, starts to flow. A powerful strike hits the knight's chest. Kshatriya confirms he feels the power, calling it insanely awesome. The knight glares at him. Kshatriya calls him bonehead and tells him to stop thinking he's the strongest, because this time he'll be destroyed. Kshatriya thinks about how to use his new power, then launches an attack at the horde, wondering if this is how it should go. The blow hits many creatures at once. The druid watches, surprised by the chaos. The giant knight roars and lifts its sword. It then strikes a small object that was tossed far away, hitting the shield's gem. The gem shatters into many pieces that float in the air. Kshatriya suddenly appears under the knight's chin, asks where he's looking, and lands an explosive punch to the chin. The giant knight feels the impact, then counters by forming fireballs in his hands. The fireballs explode, but Kshatriya blocks with his shield. The young man reaches out, ready for a new attack. A projectile hits the knight straight in the chest, and the shield is tossed like a boomerang. It strikes the knight several times at high speed. The creature roars as it gets hit, and Kshatriya leaps toward his opponent. He then readies a massive punch called the Gigantic Piston, slamming it straight into the knight's chest. The giant knight roars from the impact. Kshatriya says this will end everything, pointing 2 fingers at his enemy. The shot hits the knight's head, causing an explosion. Even without a head, the creature lifts one hand. The surrounding skeletons look up, and an explosion erupts in the middle of the horde. A notification tells him he defeated Skeleton King Valkoroba and leveled up twice. He scoffs at his foe, who thought he was unstoppable, and earns the title Kingslayer. Felicia warns the curse is lifted and suggests they leave while the monsters fight each other, and Kshatriya agrees. Later, the group chills around a bonfire in the forest. Felicia asks if that is the White Suri, and the young man confirms it. Savage Eyes and Karak are blown away by the legend's truth. Daphne explains the shield radiates a strong life force and hasn't shown its full power yet. Kshatriya says White Suri is holding back its power to match him, and he can't wait to see how strong it will get. Felicia tells him the shield is his, and she won't report it, asking him to take good care of it. The young man thanks her. Savage Eyes talks to the 9th prince, recognizing him as the great successor. Warrior White Suri. He promises they'll join Kshatriya whenever he calls them. Kshatriya says he'll count on them, noting everything worked out great again. Then he remembers something he almost forgot. Back at the great warrior's tomb, he says the fun part of collecting the items is still there. He opens a treasure chest and declares it's not over yet. Inkle shows up behind him, whining that he never gave her any praise, and the guy finally notices. She asks how he could forget something that big, and Kshatriya says sorry. He gives her a pat on the head, telling her she did an awesome job and they won thanks to her. Inkle decides to let it slide this time, but she demands he praise her a lot more. Kshatriya nods and says she's the best. The whole mess up north finally wrapped up. Still, he can't shake the feeling that Valkoroba might actually be behind the death energy. He keeps wondering why Valkoroba tried to hit the north and how he found out about that tiny shrine's secret. He stares out at the horizon, promising himself that someday he'll figure out who really created the death energy. After they got back from the northern frontier, everyone's life got crazy busy and flew by. Savage Eyes started getting his tribe ready to head north again because they still had to wipe out the Cassius herd. Kshatriya went north with him, and it took about half a month to finish the job. A stone tower rose up against the blue sky. Felicia asks herself if she's just imagining things. She tells Kshatriya she thinks he's gotten stronger, and he jokes that he's still in his growth phase. The guy asks how the temple investigation turned out, and Felicia says it went fine. Then she drops the news that she's made a huge discovery. The magic inside the temple turned out to belong to Ankle, one of the 6 ancient dragons. Kshatriya goes wild, calling it unbelievable. Felicia watches his face and asks if he already knew, but he swears it's the first time he's heard of it. Green Wind whispers that her master is acting weird, so Kshatriya decides they should hurry and file the report. They roll up to the demon's castle, and the other elves give Felicia a warm welcome as soon as she steps in. She asks if everyone's been okay and if they've had anything to eat. Karak says the place looks just the same, and Kshatriya nods in agreement. Green Wind sighs, and the guy says it feels like they're the only things that have changed. Karak points at the stairs and asks the prince if he did something wrong. 2 succubi stare down from a balcony above. Kshatriya recognizes them and wonders if they belong to Anastasia's crew. They're part of one of the 3 big factions in the kingdom, led by the 4th princess. Anastasia, Necrian, and Felicia used to belong to it. Feeling the heat, Kshatriya tells Karak he should get used to the attention and adds that they'll be getting even more from now on. They walk over to the Office of Public Merits, where Supervisor Isabella informs him his merit level has gone up to 10, raising his pay and unlocking extra facilities. She also says he can now enter the treasury vault. The young man decides it's been a long time, so it's time to spend some money. In the armory, they explain that reaching merit level 10 lets him access the first treasury vault. Supervisor Igor notes that while weapons cost merit points, you can also buy them with gold. The supervisor tells His Highness to take his time. Kshatriya tells Karak to grab whatever he needs, leaving the orc surprised. He explains that the stronger the gear, the more useful Karak will be, and watches his companion rush off to choose. Kshatriya decides not to skimp on equipment and picks a piece for himself. The armor gives resistance to elemental attacks and doesn't get in the way of his martial arts. With that settled, he says there's only one last thing left. At the forge, Supervisor Cater asks if he's talking about greaves. The young man says regular greaves mess up his martial arts and wonders how long the crafting will take. Cater says he can finish them in 2 days, so Kshatriya asks what materials are best. The blacksmith suggests using dragon leather and scales. Kshatriya asks where he can find something that rare. Cater explains that the materials were delivered today under His Highness's name, and he was planning to use them. The young man asks what he means, and Cater reveals that Lord Ishugard ordered the dragon leather and scales to be sent straight to him. Ishugard is the greatest swordsman in the demon realm, a sword lord, an elder of the mighty Asura race, and the legendary warrior who taught the sword to Demon King Mitra. Karak wonders why such a legend would help him, but Kshatriya has no answer. The prince thinks maybe the Demon King's interest in him is the reason. Suddenly, an attendant rushes over with urgent news for the 9th prince. Kshatriya asks why he's running and what's happened. The man announces there will be an audience ceremony the next morning, and the young man is surprised it's happening again. The attendant explains the audience is to honor 3 contributors, and Kshatriya asks who the third is besides him and Felicia. He then reveals it's the second prince. An attendant announces that the second prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, has returned. Karak looks at Kshatriya, who ignores him. He remembers the second prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, the guy who would kill everyone, even himself. Kshatriya wonders if he'll see him here. The audience will be held at the Demon King's castle. Karak asks the prince if he's really okay. He notes that Kshatriya has seemed off since yesterday. The young man folds his hands together, admitting he never imagined he'd be this nervous. Karak asks when the other prince will arrive, and an attendant says he'll walk straight in. Felicia shows up and says Zephyr is special in many ways. She tells Kshatriya that the merit he earned is also a big deal. The elf urges him not to get discouraged by it. She smiles and suggests they show everyone their best. A herald then announces the start of the audience ceremony. The Demon King sits on his throne in the Great Hall, watching the group approach. The entrance of the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, and the 9th prince, Kshatriya Ignaz, is announced. Kshatriya wonders how he'll handle what's coming since he's already this nervous. He then looks up at the nobles watching from the balcony. Anastasia, the 4th princess, is among the spectators, watching him from above. The young man steadies himself, knowing this is a mountain he always knew he'd have to climb. The supervisor announces that the next prince will enter. Then the entrance of the 2nd prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, is declared as he appears as a silhouette in the doorway. Kshatriya faces him, realizing they have finally met. The main character of the Demon Realm arc, the 2nd prince, walks toward the throne. Zephyr Ragnaros finally shows his face. Supervisor Isabella announces they will review the achievements of the princes and the princess. Zephyr's accomplishments are impressive enough to justify the ceremony on their own. After that, Kshatriya's and Felicia's achievements are announced, drawing everyone's attention. But that wasn't the highlight of the day. The Demon King turns to Kshatriya and says he'll give him a mission. The announcement catches everyone in the throne room off guard. Zephyr hears the king's declaration. It's an unprecedented situation. The young prince wonders what he just heard, as the Demon King personally assigned him a mission during the ceremony. His task is to explore the Thunder Fortress, protect the newly discovered passage, and investigate its interior. He has 7 days to leave, and he recognizes the name Thunder Fortress as one of the main fortresses of the Dwarven Kingdom from the game he knows. The mission previously failed when General Kashubal died from toxic gas poisoning, so His Highness must prepare proper countermeasures to finally secure the fortress. The young prince wonders what the heck is happening. They're giving him a mission that even a draconic general failed, instead of giving it to Zephyr. Kshatriya feels something is seriously off. Felicia points at him and asks if he thinks he might have angered her father. He doesn't get what she means, and she explains that normally Zephyr would take a mission like this. Karak says it must be an incredibly tough mission, and Felicia agrees it's too dangerous for Kshatriya. She asks if he thinks the same, and the young man simply agrees. Felicia decides to go with him and invites him to team up. She says that since it's Kshatriya's request, she'll accompany him and tells Karak to zip it about his comment. The prince thanks her, confirming they'll go together. Then a young man walks up and offers to join them on the mission. He addresses the 4th prince, asking if his presence would be okay. Felicia recognizes him as Katarov, but Kshatriya declines, saying the mission team is already set. Katarov takes his leave, apologizing for the intrusion. Felicia questions Kshatriya's decision, arguing he'd be useful as a skilled and rare male siren. Indeed, he's one of the strongest magic-type sirens around. Then Katarov suddenly disappears. It turns out he's a secret follower of Anastasia, a fanatic with infiltration and espionage skills who steps forward to report. The fact they sent Katarov shows they're extremely concerned. The question is aimed at Anastasia, who raises her glass and says he seems much more cautious than expected. Felicia asks Kshatriya what he knows about the Thunder Fortress. He says that hot-blooded dwarves fought dragons, and she tells Karak that there's more than one dwarven nation. Felicia adds that the High Kingdom of the dwarves, which owned the fortress, fought to protect their cities and treasures, even managing to bring down several dragons. Karak asks if the princess can also slay dragons, and she replies that she can, given enough time and resources. He concludes she can't, and Felicia scolds him, asking if he thinks dragons are just common monsters. Karak praises her vast knowledge, recalling that even that great kingdom was destroyed in the war against the dragons. She boasts that the Thunder Fortress is constantly mentioned in studies of dwarven relics. With a smile, Felicia says that if they excavate the site properly, they'll find a fortune. Karak points out that the princess is drooling while Shutra naps in the armchair. In Night Saga, the Thunder Fortress is one of the famous honeypot dungeons, where high-quality treasures and weapons remain untouched inside. But more importantly, that fortress holds something Shutra desperately needs right now. It's a weapon made for killing dragons, deadly to anyone with draconic blood. The Dragon Slayer sword, needed to fight Zephyr, who carries dragon blood, must be gotten at any cost. They arrive at the fortress entrance. A pair of A-rank dragon scale boots is on display, and Shutra shows his satisfaction with the new gear. He then asks if everyone's ready for the mission. Wearing a mask over his face, the prince orders the group forward. They step into a long, arched corridor of the fortress. The group walks together through the dungeon's interior. Karak warns that the fog is getting thicker, but Shutra corrects him, saying it's toxic gas from the mines. Felicia comments that the situation is worse than she imagined, and he suggests they move slowly. The orc asks about the gas's color, wondering if it shouldn't be yellow. Suddenly, Karak and Karma begin to choke, and Shutra turns around. The two companions collapse to the floor, and Felicia wonders what's happening. She notices the gas has changed and prepares a spell. Calling on the winds, the elf creates a protective circle around them, and her magic clashes with the toxic gas. The clash of the two elements triggers an explosion, and the blast hurls the group members backward. Shutra shouts Felicia's name. The whole corridor shakes from the explosion's force, and amid the dust, the group ends up scattered on the floor. Through the dust, three shadowy figures with sharp teeth appear. One of the creatures readies to attack the fallen prince, lunging forward with its mouth open. Lying on the ground, Shutra identifies them as General Kashubal's assassins. Then a shield springs from his arm, surprising the monster, and the shield blocks the creature's strike. He spins forward, attacking the enemies. A voice from the shield praises its master's performance, but Shutra tells it to shut up. The strike hits all three foes at once, and one of the creatures reels from the blow, being thrown backward by the impact. Shutra stands up, now firmly wielding the shield, and notes that the defeated creatures used a pretty strong poison. He pulls off his mask and says he almost put himself in danger, noting his resistance to poison has increased. Suddenly, the corridor ceiling starts shaking and collapsing. He looks up as debris falls, wondering what's happening. When a huge stone slab drops, he orders Greenwind to shield the rest of the group, and the entity confirms the command. Shutra decides they need to get out, activates his dragon blood, and scoops Felicia into his arms. Moving at great speed, he darts through the crumbling corridor. Then he spots what he's been looking for, the entrance to the Thunder Fortress. Greenwind's shield expands to contain the falling debris. The thing tells its boss to hurry because things are weird. Shutra tries to block the falling rocks on Karak. He tells the orc to hold on, saying he'll be back in a sec. He scoops up his friends and gets them to a safe spot right in front of the doorway. Just as he's about to save Karak, he sees the tunnel they came through totally cave in. Shutra yells Karak's name. Greenwind tells its boss to chill, but the boss tells it to move. While Karak is still trapped, Greenwind asks if he still has that spell from the Ingle Plains. Shutra remembers he can use it, so he calls in the King's Knights and clears a space in front of him. Karak steps out of a floating portal, lands on the ground, and the prince shouts his name. The rock slide keeps rumbling behind them, but luckily Karak looks okay. The young prince sighs in relief, wondering what just happened and what those weird creatures from Night Saga were. Nearby, Felicia and another buddy start coughing. Shutra decides the biggest emergency is to detox them before it gets worse. Then a swarm of shadowy monsters bursts out of the darkness. He sighs at the mess, and one of them jumps on him from behind. Kshatriya spins and lands an explosive punch on the creature. The monster flies off as the rest stare. Kshatriya lands, grumbling that this whole thing is a real pain, like he isn't busy enough. Two more creatures charge, and the prince dares them to come at him together because he's got no time to waste. A horde rushes at Kshatriya, and he readies his fist for a counter. He leaps, slams the ground, and blasts the monsters into the air. Then he sweeps a big strike that hits a bunch of the remaining foes. Kshatriya darts through the crowd, unleashing his power on the swarm. Felicia slowly opens her eyes, and the prince reaches out, asking if she's okay. She whispers his name, and he helps her up amid the dead monsters while she wonders what went down. He smiles, telling her not to worry because nothing serious happened. After detoxing everyone, the crew moves to storm the fortress, heading for the control room that only has two routes. One is a long road with few traps, the other is a shortcut packed with them. Felicia asks Kshatriya which way he'll go, and he says the longer route is safer. The group pushes forward down the hallway together. Kshatriya knows there's no time to chill. Karak wonders about a noise, and the prince says it means the main facility in the ruins is under attack, so someone else is trying to take the dungeon. Felicia looks surprised. Then Kshatriya tells Karak to raise his shield and lead the way. He tells the orc to trust him and follow his orders, promising nothing bad will happen. A dragon head trap shoots a projectile, and Karak steps forward, blocking it with his shield to keep everyone safe. The force pushes him to the edge of a spear-filled pit. Then the orc charges ahead, using his shield to stop a rain of arrows. More traps spring up down the hallway. Karak pants heavily after getting through the obstacles. Kshatriya praises his buddy's effort but shouts that he almost died. Thanks to Karak, they reach a huge door leading to the control room. One of them points out that the guard gargoyles are missing, and Felicia agrees. Kshatriya says they should go inside to check it out, and the doors start to open. The crew steps into the control room and sees what's going on. Kshatriya points at a figure, and Felicia confirms it. She says it must be the last Lord of Thunder Fortress, who stayed behind to run the place and let the dwarves get out. Then a companion nudges Felicia's attention to a weird sight, a big dark sphere sitting in the middle of the room. Felicia asks if the dwarves built it, and Kshatriya thinks they need a key to power it. He spots a key hanging from a skeleton's neck, grabs it, and walks toward the sphere. When he touches the key to the sphere, it starts reacting. The sphere lights up, shocking the prince and Felicia. Dozens of screens pop up around them, showing all kinds of images. Kshatriya is amazed by dwarf tech, wondering how advanced they were. A sudden noise startles everyone, and a companion asks Karak to check one of the screens. The screen shows a battle nearby. Karak spots the same creatures fighting the gargoyles, and Kshatriya confirms they're the ones he fought. The prince says those are the attackers of the fortress and wonders what they want. Karak then asks if the huge beast on the screen is a dragon. Kshatriya looks and sees a massive spear stuck in the creature's back. He finally spots it, the legendary dragon slayer spear, Escalon. The black dragon partisan was greedy and ruthless, leading the charge against the dwarven kingdom. He and his legion battered the Thunder Fortress until they broke through the outer wall. Once inside, Partisan unleashed his full power, but his arrogance gave him a slip-up that opened a gap. Tiny Spark, the fortress's top warrior, seized the chance and drove Escalon into Partisan's chest. The dragon's death sent its legion into a frenzy, making the dwarves flee and turning the fortress into a massive tomb where the dragon and many dwarves lie together. Karak confirms the dragon is Partisan and the spear in its chest is Escalon, and Kshatriya nods. The screen keeps showing the battle, and Kshatriya thinks the dark creatures must be after Escalon. Felicia says they won't let the enemies get it. The prince asks if there's any way to control the guardian. Felicia says there's nothing they can do about the gargoyle. A guardian golem lifts a hammer. Someone else is already controlling it. The golem moves forward and smashes its foes with the hammer. Felicia figures that before dying, the fortress lord gave all power to the dwarven golem because it was the top guardian. She suggests waiting to see what happens, but Kshatriya says no, this is their chance. He argues there are too many unknowns to just stand still. He tells the group to hold position and rushes toward the battle, promising to return soon. Kshatriya moves across the field, passing the gargoyles while following a map. He thinks that if he grabs a scallon first, they'll benefit no matter who wins. If the Guardians win, they can hunt the leftovers. If the enemies win, they can decide to fight or run. He looks at the map and sees he's almost there. The prince spots Partisan on the map and jokes about how handy the map is while running, but a huge golem blocks his way and swings a powerful blow at him. He barely dodges as the golem slams the ground. Kshatriya tells it to stop, saying he doesn't want to fight right now. Then one of the golem's legs starts to break. The massive golem turns toward its attacker, looking down puzzled at its broken leg. Out of nowhere, the golem senses an incoming attack. Kshatriya swoops in on his shield, and Greenwind scolds him for using a nickname. The prince says shortening names is the new trend, but the entity doesn't care. Then he heads to the dragon's corpse where the spear is stuck. The young man lands by his goal, walks up to the dragon slaying spear a scallon, and says it looks even cooler up close. He grabs it and thanks the spear. But when he tries to pull it, the spear won't budge. He gives it his all, but can't yank it out. The prince wonders why the spear feels so heavy, so he decides to pour all his remaining points into strength. The golem watches from afar as he finally pulls the spear free with a final shout of effort. Kshatriya slams the spear onto the ground, unleashing a wave of energy that sweeps across the battlefield, tossing the creatures into the air. His crew watches the spectacle on the monitoring screens, while a hooded figure watches from the shadows. Now he holds a scallon, the legendary dragon slayer masterpiece forged by all the dwarves. With the spear in hand, the prince says he finally reached his goal. But behind him, the skeletal remains of the dragon Partisan start to rise. The hooded figure forms a power orb, then sticks it into the dragon's skull. The energy courses through the bones, reanimating the beast. Kshatriya wonders how Partisan, who died centuries ago, could be back. He turns and spots a hooded figure far away, asking who the man with the sphere is. Kshatriya snaps into a defensive stance, raising his staff, but a huge creature charges, slamming him to the ground. The beast readies a mouth attack. Kshatriya looks up, trying to figure out the incoming attack, wondering if it's the purple death energy. Partisan blasts the attack at the skeletons, pulverizing anything it hits. To protect himself, Kshatriya summons a big winged shield and shouts, demanding to know what's going on. From the shield's top, he wonders why that's coming out of Partisan. A dwarven golem's hand grabs Kshatriya and his shield, then the golem lifts its hammer and strikes the skeletal dragon. The dwarven golem smashes Partisan's chest with its hammer. Kshatriya wonders why they're suddenly fighting each other. Felicia rushes in with Karak and Karma, calling his name. She asks what happened, and the prince says someone used sorcery to revive Partisan, but he doesn't know who or why. He notes it's the same purple death energy they saw on the Angel Plains. Kshatriya says they need to kill the dragon while it's still incomplete, but Felicia wonders how they'll do it. He guesses that, as a zombie dragon, it must have a core controlling its mana. He concludes that destroying that core will defeat it. Suddenly, the core in Partisan's chest glows bright. Kshatriya sees something's wrong and shouts for everyone to move, because the dragon's breath is coming. The creature blasts a powerful breath that shatters the ground ahead. The attack rips through the hall, hitting the castle wall and blowing a huge hole open, showing the night sky outside. Partisan turns and looks down at the group. Karak asks Kshatriya why the dragon is incomplete, and Kshatriya admits he didn't expect it to be this strong. He says the longer the fight goes on, the stronger the dragon gets. Then his staff starts to transform, reshaping as runes swirl around it. Kshatriya lifts the spear a scallon, now reshaped, while Felicia and Karak watch, and she remarks on how the weapon changed. The prince asks Felicia to grab the dragon's attention for a second, saying he thinks he can end this. Partisan shoots a burst of fire from its mouth. Felicia casts a spell and tells the flames to pull back. Her projectiles strike the dragon's body, causing several explosions. The creature roars while Kshatriya gets ready to move forward. He says he feels a scallon's will and can finish it with one strike, but the dragon shoots a blast of energy at him. The blast hits the ground and triggers a massive explosion. Felicia and Karak shout the prince's name. Kshatriya kneels on one knee among the rubble, gripping his spear. He wonders if he moved too fast while Partisan towers above him. Then the dragon slams the ground with its claw. Kshatriya looks to the side and sees something moving. A dwarven golem suddenly appears and grabs the creature's arm. The dwarf golem charges its fist with energy, then lunges forward and delivers a powerful punch to the dragon's chest. With its other arm, it readies an open-handed strike. The attack throws the creature backward, crashing it through the hall's wall. Partisan roars in reaction to the hit. The golem keeps fighting the dragon outside the castle. A winged shield shows up next to Kshatriya and asks if his master is okay. Felicia scolds him for saying he would finish everything, and he apologizes without making excuses. She suggests they retreat because the dragon is too much for them, but Kshatriya insists they can handle it, and she tells him not to be stubborn. He admits he was too hasty and that the more urgent the situation, the more they should fall back. The prince asks Felicia for help one more time. He stands up and promises that this time he won't make any mistakes. Kshatriya turns and calls for green wind. He jumps onto the shield and uses it to launch himself forward. Kshatriya rides his shield toward the dwarf golem and Partisan. He tells it to circle as much as possible so they won't be seen. The dragon's tail hits the golem and breaks part of its armor. Then the creature readies an energy attack in its mouth. Partisan fires the blast and completely destroys the dwarf golem. The skeletal dragon's head rises from the rubble. Felicia summons her flames and tells them to burn. A massive pillar of fire hits Partisan, engulfing it entirely. But the dragon's eye glows through the fire as it notices something. The creature gets hit by multiple energy projectiles across its body. It turns toward Ankle's attack. Then the dragon roars and readies another energy blast. Green wind warns that now is the time, since the creature is distracted. Kshatriya runs across the ground toward his opponent. He activates the dragon's blood skill, and energy flows around him. Kshatriya says there's no need to rush, because it only has to work once. The dragon's head appears before him. He says he'll do it just like Tiny Spark did long ago, needing only one hit. Then Kshatriya launches an attack called Giant Piston that hits the dragon from below. Felicia looks up and wonders what that is. She notes that Kshatriya actually did it. The zombie dragon Partisan falls defeated, and a notification confirms the victory. Kshatriya drops to his knees as several messages tell him his level has increased. He stands up, saying this is the power of a Scallan after earning the Dragon Slayer title. An armored figure comments that he can't believe he actually took the creature down. Kshatriya turns at the sound of the voice and wonders what was said. The man wonders if it was a mistake to just watch because the second prince didn't appear. Kshatriya recognizes him as the one who revived Partisan, but says it doesn't matter. The knight's weapon becomes surrounded by energy. He leaps to attack, saying he'll clean up what's left. Kshatriya questions the blue flames that block the knight's attack. The energy from the strike dissipates completely on the ground. The armored knight stands still among the remnants of the power. Kshatriya wonders what the heck just happened. He notes that his opponent's attack suddenly vanished. The armored figure looks ahead. Then something large and heavy lands forcefully on the ground. A man steps firmly onto the soil amid the dust. He turns to Kshatriya and says he arrived just in time. The prince reacts as he finally recognizes the person before him. He identifies him as the Sword Lord. The man smiles and greets the ninth prince. Ishugard, the Sword Lord, was the protector of the Asura sanctuary and the master of the demon king Mitra, comparable to an elder dragon. He was an incredibly strong figure who only appeared in the backstory, never showing up in the main plot. Even when Zephyr Ragnaros became the demon king and the realm was invaded, he stayed hidden. Kshatriya recognizes him as a mysterious powerhouse, a monster from whom even the demon king sought lessons. Ishugard turns to Felicia and says the sixth princess has grown a lot. He then lifts her into the air, remembering she was just a brat the last time he saw her. Felicia demands he put her down right away. He laughs and says seeing her throw a tantrum shows she's still a child. After being set down, she crosses her arms, embarrassed. The Sword Lord asks the ninth prince if he liked the gift, and Kshatriya remembers the dragon hide. Kshatriya thanks him, explaining that he was able to make good equipment because of it. Suddenly, the prince is hit by a blast of energy. The armored knight launches an overwhelming attack toward everyone. The energy hits the rest of the group head-on. Karak asks why they're exploding, and Kshatriya shouts that he doesn't know, but they need to get out of there first. An energy completely surrounds the armored knight, then the power explodes and dissipates amid the wreckage. Partisan's body stays fallen in the ruined city under the night sky. Ishugard complains about the noise as he creates a barrier around everyone. He asks if they are all okay, and Kshatriya thanks him, saying they are. The prince wonders what their objective could be with an explosion appearing out of nowhere. Kshatriya remembers the knight's words about the second prince not showing up. He realizes the man said something odd earlier. Since they didn't seem interested in Ascalon, he wonders what their real target was. Suddenly, he has a revelation. He turns to Felicia and calls her name. The prince says maybe their target was the second prince. She turns and asks why he's suddenly saying that. He explains that the man with the spear said he watched because the second prince didn't appear, and Felicia wonders if it was because of Zephyr. Kshatriya asks if it isn't strange that those guys, just like the ghouls, showed up right now. He says that, half a month after General Kashiabel's failure, it seems they were waiting for someone. Felicia reacts to his conclusion. He thinks they killed the general from the start to lure out the second prince. She agrees that's plausible, since Zephyr was always sent on missions like that. Kshatriya asks why and who would target Zephyr, and Felicia notes that the enemy is meticulous. Ishugard finds the story interesting, and she scolds him, saying they're being serious, but he assures her that he is too. The prince changes the subject and asks what brings him here. He explains that the Demon King is very interested in Kshatriya, so he came to have a look. The Sword Lord says the Demon King never acts without reason. He faces the prince and says that now he understands more or less what the king is thinking. Kshatriya wonders why the mood suddenly shifted. Then Ishugard extends his hand and asks if the ninth prince would like to learn from him. Kshatriya and Felicia react to the unexpected question. He clarifies that he isn't in a position to take a student and that Kshatriya has already learned the beast god fist art. Felicia asks Kshatriya when he learned that, and he wonders how Ishugard could know. Ishugard explains that, besides the beast god fist art, many types of energy are mixed inside his body. He notes that these powers don't repel each other, but embrace one another, fitting together perfectly. Anyway, the Sword Lord says he's taken an interest in the prince and wants to share some of his insights. Kshatriya reflects that, aside from the Demon King Mitra, the Sword Lord had never been the first to offer his teachings. Seeing no reason to refuse, he bows and humbly asks for instruction. Ishugard touches Kshatriya's shoulder and begins transferring his teachings. The prince realizes this is the essence of the Sword Lord. He notes that the experience is different from when he learned the beast god fist art. The Sword Lord's essence fills every corner of his body. He simultaneously gains the Asura cultivation techniques of wind, mountain, and lightning. Ishugard comments that the speed at which he acquires the techniques is faster than expected. Suddenly, the distinct powers collide inside him. The reaction throws Ishugard back from the impact. Felicia and Karak shout Kshatriya's name. The Sword Lord wonders if what's happening is even possible. The two forces start merging into a single spiral. The Asura cultivation technique blends with the beast god fist art, and his skills evolve. A column of power erupts from the castle tower. Kshatriya floats in the sky, surrounded by the result of the fusion. He opens his eyes, having gained the SS rank martial art called the Asura Divine Fist. Kshatriya lands with difficulty on a ruined rooftop. Karak asks the Sword Lord what happened, and he explains that he only intended to teach the Asura cultivation technique. He adds that Kshatriya fused the beast god fist art and the cultivation technique into one, leaving Felicia surprised. The Sword Lord says he did this unconsciously, since the only SS rank martial art in Night Saga was that of the hero lock. But now the beast god fist art has evolved into the Asura divine fist strike, on the same level as the hero's sword art. Ishugard tells Kshatriya that he is a much greater figure than he imagined. He says he won't interfere and doesn't need an explanation, because what interests him is the prince himself. Then the Sword Lord asks if he has named the technique yet. Kshatriya stands up and confirms he has, calling it the Asura Divine Fist Strike. Ishugard says it's a simple but good name and advises him to keep what happened a secret. He explains there's no need to increase the scrutiny and caution of the royal court, and Kshatriya agrees that would be best. The Sword Lord says they've finished what they came for, and now all that's left is to pack up, leaving Felicia confused. He points to Partisan's body and suggests they devour it before the expedition team arrives. Ishugard proposes splitting it into 3 parts and asks what they plan to do. Kshatriya suggests leaving it at the forge in the Demon King's castle. The older man suggests entrusting the materials to an acquaintance whose skill he personally vouches for. Ishugard asks if anyone has ever heard of someone named Amida. Felicia says it's the first time she's heard the name, but Kshatriya shouts Amida Ignacia. He describes her as the greatest blacksmith in the demon realm, and Ishugard realizes the prince knows her. Kshatriya confirms that finding her was a true secret event in Night Saga. Amida Ignacia was sometimes a man and sometimes a woman. There were rumors that she was a mage who could transform, or that the name belonged to an entire clan. The Sword Lord is pleased that he doesn't need to explain. He offers to tell them where she has been lately. As he turns to leave, the Sword Lord warns that she changes residence frequently and that they should go soon. He guarantees that if they mention his name, they will get an audience at least once. Kshatriya excitedly thanks the Sword Lord for the incredible gain in such a short time. They rest, then thoroughly search the treasure chamber. Next, they go to the archives at Felicia's insistence. She guides him quickly, ignoring Kshatriya's complaints about the dust. Felicia shows a book to Delia, commenting on how well the records are preserved. Felicia admires the dwarves' meticulousness, and Kshatriya notes she's having fun. He wonders how old this archive room is. Then he sees records preserved on a stone tablet on the floor. Kshatriya crouches down and picks up the artifact to examine it more closely. He holds the tablet and says the image looks familiar. One side seems to show Ankle and Enkidu, along with 6 elder dragons. Then he focuses on the opposite side to identify the other figure. The word conquer appears together with the image of a woman. She holds a sphere and says that all will kneel before him. Kshatriya reacts to the vision he just saw. He looks at the figure on the tablet and questions the word conquest. Then the prince wonders why that woman is there. Kshatriya crouches down, thinking this must be a painting over 1,000 years old. He holds the tablet and wonders what kind of connection 4 people and 6 elder dragons could have to be gathered together. Suddenly, Ankle appears and asks what has made him so serious. Kshatriya is startled by her appearance, and she invites him to come over for a moment. She says she thinks she did something worth praising, which just leaves him confused. Ankle floats him through the archive halls. She points him to a book and says that's exactly what he's thinking about. The book is a record of the elder dragons, and he starts flipping through it. Every elder dragon got a nickname that fit its vibe, like Enkidu, the tyrant of destruction, and Ankle, the gentle mother. There was also Quinn, the wise, who was thoughtful, and Kaltain, the warrior, who was fierce and intense. But despite his fierce reputation, Kaltain was more like ice than fire, a cold flame. He was a silent fighter who rarely drew his sword, yet his fury could scorch the world to ash. Kshatriya sees that most of the records focus on Kaltain, covering his legend and where his lair is. As he reads, a sudden idea hits him. He points to a mark on the map and says it shows Sun Lake. He never imagined a fire-type elder dragon would hide its lair beneath a lake. Now he gets why the veterans never found it, and Ankle asks if he's finally going to give her some praise. Then Kshatriya spots something odd about that spot. The map shows the lake isn't far from Amida's house, close to the spider forest. He notes it's also near the lycanthrope lands, which is perfect for tracking down Kaltain and Kreese. The prince gives Ankle a friendly pat on the head and says great job. He figures that if everything goes smooth, the next leg will bring him a full set of gifts. They spent 4 days at Thunderdome Fortress. Felicia's dedication was amazing. She stayed in the archives right up to the day they left, never looking tired. Kshatriya also spent most of his time digging for elder dragon info, but only found stuff on Kaltain. On the bright side, the king's knights got promoted. Karak got stronger during that period. Kshatriya asks if he feels stronger now. Karak answers by throwing a solid punch. Karak says all the hard work the prince put him through paid off. The next morning, a new day starts at the Demon King's castle, and a fresh mission plan from Felicia reaches the king. The plan comes with a report saying General Kashabel's death was a trap for Zephyr. Ready to move, Shutra says they should leave now, but Felicia asks to wait. She wants to look around a bit longer because there's still a lot she hasn't seen. Shutra refuses, reminding her that the Sword Lord told them to find Amita fast before she vanishes. He hustles Felicia into the carriage, saying there's no time to waste. With everyone aboard, Shutra tells Karak they're good to go. Karak steers the carriage out of the fortress. Inside, Shutra thinks about the mission's risks and rewards, eager to see Caitlin's reaction to his new technique. He hopes their reunion comes soon. 3 days later, a new expedition team forms to investigate the tracks of those who targeted them. Zephyr steps forward, and he himself, the party directly involved, takes command. He studies a drawing of a dragon carefully. 3 figures appear, beginning with famine, then death, and finally war shows herself. But Zephyr keeps looking up. He wonders who the woman in the engraving is. Meanwhile, a volcano erupts. A massive creature emerges from the lava. Then the giant being orders everyone to begin. The Knight of Conquest shows up, ready for battle. Shutra shoots a flaming arrow at his training partner. Then he focuses and creates a small flame in his palm. The projectile hits Chris right on target and sends him flying back, and Karak remarks he's never seen training like that. Karak wonders if Shutra might get hurt. Felicia points out that, surprisingly, he's fine. Then Shutra uses healing magic on himself. His skill and mana control rise, leaving him exhausted. He takes a deep breath and gets ready to try again. Karak says this isn't normal, but Felicia notes his magic is improving and suggests they let him be for now. They trained at night and traveled by day, crossing the lycanthrope lands to reach their goal. Suddenly, Felicia orders the carriage to stop, and Shutra looks outside to see the problem. 2 guards block the road, warning that the path is closed and telling them to turn back. The guard explains it's an official matter of the lycanthrope royal family and orders them to leave the area. Felicia steps out, finding it odd that a royal issue would arise in the middle of nowhere, but the guard insists she must go. She confronts him, demanding the road be opened because she needs to find the person in charge of the operation. The guard asks if she thinks she's some kind of royalty, and Felicia simply confirms she is. The guard is left speechless, so she repeats that yes, she is. She faces the newcomer and confirms her identity again. They are led into a military camp set up in the forest. An elf arrives with Chris and asks what Felicia and Shutra are doing there. Felicia retorts that she should be the one asking why they're blocking the road. Chris says he heard Shutra turn the Demon King's castle upside down and wants to know what he's been up to. Shutra smiles, saying the timing is perfect because he was just about to show everyone. Suddenly, everyone watches a fast movement heading their way. The elf dashes forward and throws a punch at the prince. She moves quickly, ready for the attack, but Shutra gets ready to counter with his own punch. Their fists clash, creating a huge impact. The explosion throws the elf and the other soldiers backward. She lands and notices his technique is different, asking what it is. Shutra explains it's the Asura divine fist strike. Felicia adds that Shutra combined the beast god art with the Asura cultivation technique, and Chris wonders how the Sword Lord taught him. The elf asks if she can learn the strike, but Shutra apologizes, saying he can't teach it right now. Chris comments that a martial art that even its creator can't teach sounds absurd, and Shutra asks if that was a compliment. He thinks Shutra's growth rate is terrifying, and decides he needs to train even harder so he isn't left behind. Chris says that now they've seen how much Shutra has grown, it's time to talk about them. Inside the tent, he warns that everything he's about to say must stay secret, and Felicia asks why it's so serious. Then he reveals that a prisoner locked on the lowest floor of the Grey Tower has escaped. Shutra remembers the Grey Tower is the prison for the most dangerous criminals. The prisoner's name is Gerard Moonlight, and Chris says he's their maternal uncle. Shutra is surprised they have an uncle, but Chris explains Gerard was imprisoned 20 years ago. He was once a powerful warrior of the royal family who would have inherited the throne if he hadn't gone mad. In his endless quest for strength, Gerard used all sorts of heretical methods and eventually lost his mind. His madness caused a disaster, and hundreds of lycanthropes were sacrificed just to subdue him. Chris adds that, luckily, it all ended within the palace, allowing the incident to be covered up internally. According to the report, Gerard headed east, but he lost half his strength in the last battle, so there's no cause for concern. Kshatriya points out that east is the opposite direction from where they are and asks if they know how Gerard escaped. Chris says they're still investigating, but it looks like he had outside help. The situation reminds him of an event from the game Night Saga, where it was possible to free Gerard to weaken the lycanthropes. Meanwhile, night falls over the forest under a full moon. A lycanthrope guard gets grabbed by the neck. The attacker tells him to speak if he wants to live. He lifts the guard into the air, choking him, then interrogates him about where the moonlight herb is. Kshatriya feels confused. Suddenly, he's in an unknown place, facing an imposing woman floating before him. He identifies her as the Knight of Conquest. He wonders what's happening and where he is. A dark vortex opens above them. Kshatriya watches the anomaly closely. From within it, he sees the figure of Famine. Then Kshatriya suddenly wakes up in his bed, gasping for air. He sits up, wondering what that was and why he felt so hostile. He also wonders why the word famine popped into his mind. Karak bursts into the room and warns the prince that the situation is bad. Kshatriya gets up as his companion shouts that the enemy has invaded. The orc reports a scarred man is slaughtering soldiers with his bare hands. From the description, Kshatriya recognizes him as Gerard Moonlight. Chris and Caitlin find the fallen soldiers. Kshatriya and Karak arrive running, and the prince calls out to Chris. The young man asks why Gerard is there, since he was supposed to have fled east. Then he demands that Chris stop hiding information and tell him the whole truth. Kshatriya asks what the real reason for their visit to this place was. Caitlin reveals that the reason for their trip is the moonlight herb. She explains that their original goal was the herb, and they only learned of Gerard's escape later. The moonlight herb is an item with a monstrous healing effect, capable of reviving someone on the brink of death. Kshatriya realizes that Gerard also came for the herb to recover half of his lost strength. Suddenly, Caitlin notices a beam of light in the sky and recognizes it as Felicia's magic. Sparks fly through the air near one of the camp's tents. Felicia lifts a massive wall of fire to stop the enemy's advance. She keeps her hands outstretched to hold the flame barrier, but Gerard walks straight through the fire and charges at her. Felicia grits her teeth, realizing her attack had no effect. Kshatriya attacks Gerard from above, intercepting him before he reaches Felicia. The prince lands beside her with a shield and asks if she's okay. Gerard recovers from the blow and lands with a punch to the ground. He glares at the newcomers and recognizes them as the children of Elaine Moonlight. Caitlin and Kreese charge forward together to attack Gerard. She calls him a traitor and demands he surrender without a fight, but Gerard grabs her and remarks how much she looks like her mother. He slams her violently into the ground while Kreese tries to intervene. Kreese transforms into a beast and attacks Gerard, screaming Caitlin's name. Gerard manages to grab the beast by the neck. He commands the creature to wither, and the beast's body starts to wither in his hands. Kreese falls to the ground, exhausted and back in his normal form. He tries to get up, but he has no strength. Kshatriya watches the scene and wonders about the true nature of that dark energy. Gerard reveals himself as the wielder of Famine's power, with a hooded figure floating behind him. He clenches his fist, concentrating the dark energy in his hands. With a single strike, he sends spikes of energy from the ground toward Kreese. The attack hits Kreese head-on, injuring him. Kshatriya runs with his shield to protect his companion, shouting his name. The prince realizes Gerard was never this strong in the game, but his opponent scolds him for being distracted. Then Gerard grabs Kshatriya by the neck. He lifts him off the ground with no difficulty. With a fixed gaze, Gerard commands Kshatriya to wither. The young prince resists his uncle's power with all his might. The impact of Kshatriya's fall creates a crater in the ground. Gerard throws him violently to the ground, but is surprised by a sudden resistance. The prince screams as the dark energy tries to consume him. His uncle extends his hand to finish the attack, but Kreese appears and tells Gerard that he is his true opponent. He then unleashes a series of punches against his adversary. Gerard blocks the blows and questions him for not greeting his uncle first. Kreese replies that the Gerard of the royal family died 20 years ago, and that he is just a fugitive. From a distance, Shutra grips the hilt of his sword. He activates the skill under the king's banner to strengthen his companion. Kreese feels the power flowing through his body and wonders if this is Shutra's magic. With his new strength, he lunges at Gerard with a powerful burst of speed. Gerard notices that his nephew's movements have suddenly changed. Kreese lands a devastating blow that sends his uncle flying toward the ground. The lycanthrope takes the full force of the punch as Kreese unleashes all his strength in the attack. A massive explosion of energy throws Kreese and Caitlin backward. Felicia can't see anything through the dust, but Shutra reassures her, saying that they're winning. The two siblings attack Gerard together, delivering coordinated strikes against him. Gerard faces them and acknowledges that they are truly Elaine's children. He then decides he no longer needs to go easy on them. A new transformation begins, and Gerard becomes a bestial creature. His new form charges forward to attack. He slashes Kreese with his claws, hits him right in the chest, and sends him crashing to the ground. The young lycanthrope feels the impact of the hit, and Caitlin also hits the ground, badly hurt. Gerard moves toward his nephew, swearing he'll kill him, and claws at Kreese once more. The strike launches him far through the trees, and Gerard jumps at Kreese, ready to finish him off. A shield pops up to block the attack. Shutra shows up with the shield and stops Gerard, catching him off guard. He yells his buddy's name. Summoning the king's knights, Karak shows up behind the lycanthrope and spears him, but Gerard blocks it with his arm and hurls the orc back. At the same time, Shutra gathers energy in his hands, readying his fist for a heavy strike. He slams a giant piston right into Gerard's chest, using the secret beast god fist technique. He fires the wild wolf fist strike, and Gerard counters with a strong hit that slams the prince down. Karak watches and shouts at the prince. The lycanthrope turns to Shutra and says he's not bad at all. Even after the hit, the young man stands up and faces his foe, coughing from the last blow. Gerard walks up to Shutra and warns he'll really kill him this time. The prince just says no, gets ready to use the beast god fist, and declares it's his turn now. The lycanthrope is surprised to see the prince use the same move. Shutra launches the wild wolf fist straight at his opponent. After mastering it, the prince says it's his uncle's turn to feel it. Gerard wonders how Shutra knows the wild wolf fist. The prince readies another hand attack, then hits him with an explosion fist. The lycanthrope endures the hit, and Shutra caps it off with a kick that launches him into the air. He lands and notes his aim was the head, while Gerard counters with dark energy. Energy spikes shoot up from the ground toward the prince. Then a huge explosion blows up in the forest. Shutra shields himself, confused about what just happened. He watches the wreckage and wonders if his uncle ran away. With the fight done, his level jumps twice, and he thinks the issue is settled for now. Shutra rushes to Felicia to ask about Caitlin, but things look bad. Felicia says Caitlin's injury is too bad and magic won't heal her fast enough. The prince feels a sharp chest pain and turns. Shutra sees that Caitlin's insides are totally ruined even though her outer wounds have healed. Felicia comes over worried, but he tells her not to stress and asks her to give Caitlin something for him. Then Chris shows up, gives Felicia a box, and tells her to feed both Caitlin and Shutra with what's inside. She opens the box and is shocked by what she finds, the legendary moonlight herb. With both of them down, Felicia gets ready to use the herb while Chris and Karak watch. She holds the flower, and it starts to glow, then magically splits into two pieces. The two halves drift to Shutra and Caitlin, who start absorbing them. Caitlin's body radiates strong energy as she heals. Felicia watches and notes the power flowing from them. All of a sudden, a wolf shape rises from Shutra and soars up. Chris says he hasn't seen it himself, but he knows the moonlight herb legend. The story says the original Wolf King gathered the lycanthropes and built a nation. Then the red dragon Castian attacked, and after a 7-day battle the Wolf King beat him, but his own heart was broken and death came. In desperation, he found a white flower, ate it, and its moonlight essence became his new heart, giving him the name Moonlight. No other lycanthrope has ever done that since, and that's why the moonlight herb is legendary. Chris watches and sees the legend playing out right in front of him. The wild part is that it's happening to Kshatriya, who's from a different race. His hero-like body reacts to the moonlight herb, giving him 2 hearts and 2 extra starting points. Then Kshatriya starts to open his eyes. He wakes up to see Caitlin sleeping next to him. He sits up, startled, and calls her name. He looks around, confused about what's going on and where he is. He then spots the fancy room door. It opens, 3 guards walk in, and a woman with guards asks if he slept well last night. She calls him 9th Prince Kshatriya Ignas. Kshatriya is surprised, having seen that face a ton in the game. He recognizes her as the 4th queen, Elaine Moonlight, mother of Chris and Caitlin. She thanks him for saving her kids, but he says he just did what he had to. Elaine says no need to be modest, he did something worthy of praise. She skips the small talk and gets to the point, asking if he plans to become the Demon King. Kshatriya is speechless and asks what she means. Elaine sees that he never thought about it, which fits his previous attitude. She warns that his situation has changed and he should start thinking about it. The queen tells him to consider what actions will help him most from now on. Back in his room, he notices he's been asleep for 4 whole days. Enkel confirms he slept for 4 days and that she cared for him the whole time. She explains they're in a lycanthrope royal village. He and Caitlin shared a bed to boost healing, and Kshatriya asks what that means. Enkel wonders if her master forgot using the moonlight herb. Kshatriya checks his skills and sees he did use the herb, gaining a new passive. He thinks a new power has been added, like a second energy core. Enkel says Chris told her the closer they are, the more their life force activates, and she suggests he hold her hand. So he puts his hand on Caitlin's. Energy rushes between them as soon as he touches her. Kshatriya looks at his hand and sees she was right. Enkel explains that because of the moonlight herb, they're now linked, just like her and the prince. Later, as they walk the halls, Chris says nobody knows if Gerard is alive or dead. He says there were casualties during the chase, but they found bits of Gerard's body and will keep looking until they can confirm he's dead. Chris then switches topics, saying his mother gave him an offer. He admits he's strong but not overwhelmingly so, at best at Sylvan's level. The gap between him and the second prince is huge, almost unmentionable. Still, Chris thinks Kshatriya can catch up and become the Demon King. The prince listens to his friend's words. Chris adds that, unlike him, Kshatriya can win support from other races and also has the Sword Lord behind him. If his public deeds keep growing, even the Gandharvas, now locked up, might get amnesty. Kshatriya is surprised and wonders why they were confined. Chris tells him to think about it, noting a big difference between considering something and ignoring it completely. The young prince becomes thoughtful, looks out the window, and ponders becoming the Demon King. In a carriage, a new talk starts. The captain of the Blood Wolf Squadron, Ludwig Moonlight, asks Her Majesty if she really thinks the 9th prince could become the Demon King. Elaine says she knows the Demon King and that he always has a reason for his actions. He wouldn't act on a whim, maybe he saw something in the 9th prince they missed. Ludwig suggests they are father and son, but Elaine calls him naive for not getting the situation. She explains the Demon King would be happy if his son killed him to take the throne, because it would bring a stronger successor. Ludwig admits it could be a risky move, but a future with the 9th prince as Demon King would be best for them. He says the demon world is ruled by the strongest, and Elaine fully agrees. She reflects, saying the fact both disturbs and pleases her. Meanwhile in the forest, a group of lycanthropes looks for someone, saying he couldn't have gone far in his condition. One scout spots something, and they finally find Gerard leaning against a tree. A shadowy figure comes close and says it looks like he's had time to think. The being then asks if he'll take the offer now. Gerard reaches out his hand, which is wrapped in dark energy. Hunger hovers over the lycanthropes, ordering them to wither. Their bodies collapse as Gerard stands behind them. Gerard finally surrenders and tells the being to take what it wants. A dark smile shows up, saying it's time to start over. The shadowy figure gets ready for a different ending than before. A few days later, Caitlin finally wakes up, with Sutra and Chris beside her. Because of Gerard, Chris went back to the main palace, and the next day the group headed to the spider forest. Robin, their guide, warns that after the twin bridges they'll have to get off their horses and walk. Sutra asks the boar lycanthrope guide what the spider forest is like, and he says it's a very peaceful place. Robin repeats that the forest is peaceful with no beasts or monsters, and Sutra agrees, though something feels off. When they arrive, they see the forest covered in giant creature bones. Robin wonders what happened, but Sutra says he knew it wouldn't be peaceful. He then looks out at the forest and wonders what the problem will be this. He tells Karma to let the lycanthropes know what's up, and she leaves right away. Ankle warns she feels strong magic in the forest center and fears that if it's destroyed, something terrible will happen to the forest. Later, the group sets up camp around a fire. Sutra asks what happens if a guardian spirit vanishes, and Felicia says there are two ways. The spirit is destroyed, or the source that created it disappears. Ankle, though small, is a high-level spirit, so she probably wouldn't be destroyed if her source vanished, but most spirits would. Sutra decides the forest spirit weakened because its source was damaged, and Felicia agrees that's the most likely reason. Suddenly, she stops talking and looks up at the sky. Felicia wonders if the moon's color looks odd. Just then, Daphne bursts out of the trees and attacks the group. Sutra grabs Daphne and throws her to the ground, asking what's gotten into her. He grabs her by the arms and shouts for her to wake up. Then the prince sees his friends are also being attacked. Karak is surrounded by tiny creatures and asks what's happening. Felicia blasts a flash of light at the attackers. The light hits the creatures and also Karak, who shields his face. She wonders what on earth is happening. Daphne says it's because of the spirit of madness, leaving Felicia confused. The druid then casts a purification spell. The dark influence is forced out of the creatures, and everyone affected collapses to the ground. Finally free from control, Sutra holds Daphne and sees they're back to normal. Karak asks what just happened, and Daphne says they need to find the cause for now. The group watches the moon as the energy keeps spreading. Karak hears a noise, and Daphne realizes the defenses have fallen and something is happening. Ankle explains that illusion and reality are blending because the spirit's power is so strong you can't tell what's real. The group is suddenly surrounded by a horde of shadowy monsters. He gets ready to fight and tells everyone to gear up. Sutra rushes forward and lands a powerful punch on a monster. Karak and another warrior battle the creatures, and an elf joins the fight. The monsters come at them from all sides while the group defends. Karak throws a series of blows at the creatures and warns the prince there are too many monsters for them to handle. Sutra asks Ankle to go up and report what's happening from above, and she agrees. The fairy flies high, getting a new view. She sees a giant firing an attack from far away, watches in surprise, and wonders if that's really a giant. The group gathers among the fallen monsters as the ground around them turns corrupted. Karak wonders if the monsters will come back, and Sutra asks what's happening. Then the horde suddenly turns and walks away. The elves say they're retreating, and the prince notes it's a relief for now. A sudden noise in the forest grabs Sutra's attention. He jumps back as a projectile hits a tree and demands to know who's there. Karak also gets hit by one of the attacks. A dark clawed paw slams the ground hard. Sutra then sees Daphne and a raccoon popping out of the bushes. The raccoon looks at the prince and asks what he said. The creature wonders if they can't see its greatness, which surprises everyone.